It was a really good conversation. I hate to stop it, but I know that we.
Okay, we are on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we said when we came back from lunch, we're gonna start with nonfiction, hoping that that will help us to get to a better place with what do we do with nonfiction and fiction, right? Okay, so literary text. So I guess the question is, how do you want to proceed? I think what we did last time with literary text was we just started throwing out kind of big topics that made sense to us that would fall underneath that reading literary text, right? And then we took that and we narrowed it down to, like, we said, well, these kind of go together, and these kind of go together, and these kind of go together, and we kind of came up with our clusters from there. So, do you want to kind of go down that same path? Do some thinking about what falls under nonfiction, what would be the things that I would think, and we'll just do kind of like I said last time, that barf draft where we throw it all up there and then we take a look at it. Does that sound good to you? Okay, so to honor all learners in the room, let's have a little bit of quiet think time. Jot down if you need to or not, but I know some people need that. Maybe you weren't thinking about it over lunch, but maybe you were. So maybe you're ready, maybe you're not, I don't know. And then,
So what we're considering now is ideas we have about what the cluster should be for nonfiction.
yeah, so the last time we did this, it really was just thinking about all the things that was just really a, what do you think could fall under there, right? Isn't that what we did? Yeah, we thought about what kinds of standards fall under here. Is that what you said, Nick? Is that what we did?
Yeah, we just kind of came up with what would be the types of skills and standards that would
Okay.
be under here, and then we figured out.
And then we smushed those together.
Right.
And then we took that and we kind of expanded it if we needed to from there. Okay.
Do we have that list on the,
I do have it, yes. Would you like to see that?
Yeah,
Oh,
that-
no, I don't have
Okay.
that really
Well,
big
that's
one.
okay, because it doesn't take us to rethink it anyway.
The reason I don't is because we took it, I have these though, I can put these up. We took all that thinking, we put it into clusters, and we moved everything else under
but
each
that-
one.
that
And you
helps.
type those up?
Yes.
Very
That's
bottom
not
of the-
good.
They're on, yeah, they are on the docs, yeah, but I'm happy to put these back up for you so you can see them as well.
Okay, yeah, we have those, you're right.
Oh, you have them, okay.
Well, I mean, you sent it to us, so.
Right, do you want me to put them up? Or
It's up to
do-
you, I think if everybody printed them or got to, or can look at them on their, I don't need
Would
them.
anyone like to see them visual up?
I've got mine on my phone.
I feel like a no. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
we
just
don't
gonna leave
need
it here then in case you.
We don't need them, thank you for
Yeah,
reminding us.
that's
we
okay.
have them.
That was the one, remember I said, can I please recycle this one so I don't have to spend it?
I'm not. Are you having trouble?
No, I was able to, but I had to close out my internet.
You need some help here. You're trying to get connected.
I could share, so I close everything out, usually, don't you? But you get to close everything and then you get back in?
I hate to take.
I have,
so
but I
can
can
Well, I
shut
did
it.
while ago when I
Did you
came
shut
back from
your-
lunch. I didn't show you know I'm stealing it.
No.
Yeah. I'm losing my power.
Mine just loses it just when it's not even on.
And did you shut this down?
Uh-huh. What moves his arms?
That's right, you watch out, you get a
Careful.
black eye.
I know
It's really to the right side
The
of
next
the
one, black eye,
here.
yeah.
It's dangerous.
That's why she's leaving.
My son-in-law, I just use Internet Explorer, I'm not trying to.
Try to
get
organize.
it.
These are just.
Are there any comments? I should be ready. You're welcome.
Which one are you looking for?
Comic Corner.
I can have one over here. Okay, how about your folder? Let me check your scene. It's across the-
Is that the two ones? Okay. Yeah, okay, I'll just read it.
it's very teacher driven, so
Well,
the
it was teacher
curriculum is-
driven and there was a lot of
curriculum-
choice.
Oh, there's tons of
It was
choice.
a lot of her, she got a stack of books.
Ooh, I bet that was so fun.
I know, I didn't pay that much, I just knew she was not complaining about it and she liked it and didn't mind it and all
That was the intent of
Yes.
the course, was to embed some of those higher level, like, you know, the 11, 12th grade standards into a course that students would read and read and read and
Yes,
read and read.
she had a stack and she was, and of course it was, she's a huge Cardinal fan, so it was all hitting during all the playoffs. So I'd go downstairs and I'm like, what are you supposed to be doing right now? But she got
Awesome.
through it, but she's enjoying it.
That's
So
awesome.
I thought
I'm
I'd
so
test
glad to
that a
hear
lot.
that.
Since we're not enjoying the study elements, thought I'd give you a good.
I appreciate that, 'cause that's brand new, and that was kind of like, how's that gonna go? The WA lip course, I didn't know that.
My daughter hated stuff.
Oh my god, my son
I'm
was,
sure.
yeah. And to watch my husband try to help him with it is phenomenal.
more time, if you want more time, that's fine, just let me know, I need to
That's big thing.
be able to see them from you. No? See your head shaking, I saw versus, I don't see you nodding, so, okay. Okay, I'm gonna start then.
Sounded like a threat.
I know. It felt a little bit like that, cause I feel like there's like no acknowledgement, like, if we don't look at her, I don't like an aggressor, maybe she'll just, I don't wanna tell her any more time. Maybe she'll just take the account. Okay, so, you wanna start just throwing some stuff up here?
Interpreting graphs and charts.
Okay.
That's a big one.
I'm using the two colors again, so
Think
let's
they
see
don't
that.
see.
Or even drawing conclusions based on
Yes.
those things.
Or timelines.
Can I put et cetera?
Yep.
Okay.
Evaluate if, reasoning is valid, evidence is relevant.
Are these clusters?
And
Or
we're
are
just
these
putting
under
standards
clusters?
out right now, I think.
I think we're just kinda throwing stuff up there and then
Oh,
we'll figure
okay.
out, like, I think that's kinda what we did last time.
Okay.
And then we put these under the clusters, that's what.
Yeah, that's kinda what we did
Gotcha,
last
okay,
time, was we
gotcha.
looked at it all and said, what makes sense?
That makes sense.
Okay, so I think,
Determine the claim.
I'm sorry, it was
What
evaluate,
Reasoning is sound, relevant, evidence, which is extremely hard to do on an 8th grade level. Or better.
Because their brains haven't developed
Yeah.
yet in that reasoning.
Right, and you can find any backup you want on the internet.
is sound and relevant and something?
Valid,
Actual.
or is it credible? Is it
Credible.
credible? Yeah. Is
Sources are credible.
credible
Is it okay if we add
valid?
reasoning
Yeah, valid.
/ evidence?
Sure.
Support for that.
Those,
No, that's two
except,
different
yeah,
things.
and I see those as two different things.
No,
Oh,
two different
two
things?
different
Yeah.
yourself into believing anything.
Identify whether or not the evidence is credible and relevant. That's different from evaluating the reason, to me. anyway,
Right, for sure.
evaluating reasoning.
Okay, so
Yeah,
just
they
make
need
it
to be able
A
to
separate
pick it
one.
out whether it
Yeah,
is.
right. Evaluate,
Well, reasoning is logical. Not
evaluate
necessarily.
whether the evidence is credible
Relevant.
and relevant. Well, relevant to the argument, or relevant to the analysis, or whatever the purpose is, your motive. At least at 11th and 12th, we have to do that.
Do all of these things go under here then?
Well, I think that it's implied that the students will know that there's a difference between their reason for wanting their curfew to be extended 30 minutes and their evidence to support those reasons.
Okay. So credible reasoning?
Relevant and
Valid.
Yeah,
Yeah,
relevant and
valid
valid are
or
not.
logical.
It's evidence that's
Logical, I like
credible.
logical,
Yeah, it's either logical or valid.
Relevant, valid, logical.
All right.
Piece of paper.
Determine the main idea or the claim in a text. There may be two different things, but determine main idea.
Can you
determine
separate them
claim.
out? Are them separate?
Are we
Yes,
gonna go with-
sometimes they're separate, it depends on
Main
the
idea?
purpose of the text.
Is it the same one we have now?
You could say determine the claim in an argument,
Or
an
like,
argumentative.
is it a
way.
controlling idea, is it a main idea, is it
Yeah,
a, yeah, we need to be consistent, I think.
oh, if
in
we
our
say
language.
controlling for the other one?
I don't think we
Uh,
have. We
I
said
don't think
theme for
I don't remember.
literary.
I
Yeah.
determine or identify the
We
themes
said
of
theme.
literary.
Was separate from
And
Yeah, and I
a-
think we talked about it as in terms of central ideas as opposed to
Yeah.
main idea, and I think we
Okay.
had a discussion about how that's different, right? There's like
Right.
We need to, and this is just a suggestion, what do most of the textbooks call it now?
The ACT test calls it the main idea, I can tell you
Okay.
that.
What do texts call it?
Still?
Yes.
Now, is that
Absolutely.
an update, is that updated? Cause I know that's coming.
Yeah.
Well, I don't
It's
know about
changed.
next year's test, but
Main
this
idea.
year's test, that's what it's called.
Our reading is updated and it's main idea in our
Yeah.
reading.
Okay, so main idea,
Mhm.
what was the question then? Not, cause I'm not sure.
Central,
Should it be main idea or
Oh.
central idea? And I guess the consensus is.
Well, I think we need
main
to talk
idea.
about that a little bit, because if you think about, when you, alright. Because there's several, is there like one main idea and several central ideas, or there's a main idea of a paragraph, and then there's, I mean, I don't know, like what, how does that work?
Central idea is the big overarching.
Main idea.
It's the overarching idea. There might be several main ideas, but underneath that overarching idea.
The way it appears on the test, and this is just a test, but I mean, I don't wanna confuse the 11th graders especially. The questions read, what is the main idea of paragraph 3? What is the main
Right.
idea of
it's
the whole text?
specific, right.
Yeah.
But it's that's to a passage, so
Right,
when you
that's
talk about
to
it
a
as a portion of a
passage,
text.
but I mean, yeah, and it's kind of,
So.
there is a theme to nonfiction texts that are book length, I grant that.
So
You know, a
if
book
you were
like this
asking-
brags all over, but the shouting, but most of the nonfiction texts we assign are.
Right, I'm just
So
asking,
is
I'm
the central
not.
idea what the whole text is about, what's the central idea of the whole text? And then within that text, there are several main ideas, is that what we're saying?
I think they're the
I'm not.
same. And I,
Okay.
when I think
Interchangeable?
central idea, I think that, I call that instead, it's more author's purpose. And then
Or
what's the main
theme
idea?
or theme in a fiction,
I
Sure,
see what
yeah.
you're saying.
yeah.
And I think, remember
Yeah.
how I was talking about Study Island, they
Yeah.
revamped it, and they use central and main interchangeably,
Yes,
which was one
a
of
lot
the
of
things
texts do now.
that I had to.
Did you say Study Island?
Yes.
Yes.
And they've revamped and so that was one of the things I noticed that was
No, I
causing
didn't think we talked about
confusion.
that. She does too.
Right, they're using it interchangeably and I had to
Yeah.
spend so much time explaining
Well,
the difference.
that-
Even though they weren't using it as a different piece, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in Missouri, if students are going to be using the ACT as of today,
Mhm.
then we need to go with main idea,
yeah,
right?
That's fine. Okay, so determine main idea, determine the claim, do you want to put of an argument, or
Yeah.
is that, okay?
Mhm.
Main idea works for me.
So I mean, I found myself really going back to the literary text list. I mean, now granted the vocabulary changes in some cases, like instead of narrative point of view, it's like the author's purpose. It's
Well,
instead
no,
of
there's
plot
still an
setting.
author's point of view
Yeah.
Right.
in a nonfiction piece. It could be a
Sure.
third person or a first person, whereas the same thing is true in a narrative.
Did we get author's purpose down there?
No?
Not yet.
Want to put that there?
And
I'm sorry, Nick,
No,
I
that's
didn't mean
okay.
to
No,
interrupt that.
you're fine. I was just saying, like, there's a laundry list I wanna add,
Author's
which are all the
purpose.
ones we have in fiction.
Okay,
With
gotcha.
a few caveats of changes
Yeah.
in vocabs.
Maybe you could slash that
Thank you.
off
So,
of
like-
purpose and also put point of view.
Or position.
Yeah.
Well,
Stance,
here's an
whatever.
example, we have in the literary one, identify and analyze,
Structure.
plot,
Point of view.
setting, character.
Tone,
Well,
choice.
the elements in nonfiction that I wrote down, include analyzing how the author uses rhetorical strategies and devices. And then some of the things I listed were like parallelism, rhetorical questions, anaphora, antithesis, blah, 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 all that. That's different, because you don't see those as much.
Right, yeah.
They
And I-
occur in fiction, but not.
What I noticed about South Carolina, and I like, is that they included propaganda techniques in that list.
Yeah, cause you brought that
Mhm.
up. Okay, those would be the types of things, using anaphora, using
Mhm.
parallelism, antithesis, repetition,
Which one?
yeah.
But the interesting thing about what you're saying is with the vocabulary that comes up, the only time that ever makes any difference to my students is in AP Lang. And then anaphora, no one, like, that's not, like
Well,
AP
it's on the
Lang, yes, that
EOC
matters.
test, it's on the EOC test in the sophomore test, 10th grade test.
Anaphora is on the
No,
EOC?
not anaphora, but
Parallelism.
parallelism.
Okay,
Some
got
of
it.
those devices are.
No, I'm with you, and we focus, we have a whole unit on rhetorical device, like
Yeah,
that's our
yeah.
whole thing, but no, I'm with you on that. I'm talking about some of the other,
The
some
really
of those you're
obscure
talking about.
ones. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Sure.
those are like.
Sure, that's
things
like
that-
Schenectady and senior
Those
English, but
things,
you don't put it
yes.
in.
Right,
So
so
it's still-
rhetorical devices, or is that what we wanna?
So like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I put rhetorical strategies in
Yeah,
devices,
it-
because it seems to me that strategies are things like the sentence structure features, and a device would be something more like a rhetorical question. There are actual, I don't care, I think they're different though.
Right,
So like
I
a
think-
reportable,
Could-
Well, what
reportable
about authorial techniques?
That's too
Are
broad.
techniques?
Rhetorical needs to be in there, the rhetorical strategies.
So
Yeah,
would you put,
Is
You
that
could say
something
different
like,
though?
when I'm thinking about sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, would you put propaganda techniques like ethos, pathos, logos
Yeah.
within
To me,
rhetorical
that's a
techniques?
rhetorical strategy.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? You're
Yep.
strategizing how to organize the whole thing and
Yeah.
which appeals to put at different places. And then a device is something more concrete, like
Yeah.
a rhetorical
Yeah.
question.
And to me, that parallels the literary one we came up with, analyze how literary devices contribute to meaning. Right? You're doing, maybe I'm not, am I crazy? You're using rhetorical devices here. So, I mean, which regular literary devices.
We do need to make sure we define those, so, I mean, what we're talking about.
Right, and the expectation, obviously, we have to really be careful
We will
about that
do
within
that.
our progression, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
Because we
probably
really
should
want,
be two
I mean,
separate ones, shouldn't it? Rhetorical strategies and rhetorical devices, and I see them as distinct.
Well, we can put them down as two separate
Yeah,
ones
and
now.
then we
Yeah,
can
you're gonna figure it out, but what am I saying about that? We're identifying them, we're determining them.
Identify and
or-
analyze.
Okay, identify and analyze rhetorical devices and rhetorical strategies. Cause you like kids to know what's being done to them through text, right? You like them to know what is being used on them. That's one of the things that I like about even the younger ones, knowing, oh, this is what's being used here. Hi, are you?
Dr. Baumgarten?
I'm Dr. Bumgarner.
Hi, Barry.
Hi, Barry.
Still not used to that. Sorry, I couldn't get away.
No, we expected you around one. I'm Carrie.
Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Here's your name tag.
Thank you.
Let me get this down. While I'm getting this down, do you guys wanna look around and introduce yourselves to, can we call you Barry?
Yes,
Is
please.
that okay? Okay,
Yeah.
we'll call you Barry. So, I'm Carrie Skeeters. I'm from Wentzville. Seems like a standard, piece is I was appointed by the President Pro Tem of the Senate. Okay? And I'm a curriculum coordinator. That's what I do there.
And she's our chair.
And I am the liaison.
And the
It's a
chart
better
writer.
word.
And the chart writer, and the span director.
That's important.
As a candy giver.
Just a-
Kim shares some of that responsibility. Okay, Karen, I'm gonna pass it off to you, and I'm gonna turn my back.
I am
Sorry.
Karen Mason, I teach at East Newton High School, I'm in the southwest corner of the state. I am a family and consumer sciences teacher. I was contacted by the college and career readiness group here, and, at VSC, and that's all I need to say.
You're
That's
south
perfect.
of Springfield?
Yes,
I grew
very
up in
south,
Springfield. I grew
very
up in
south.
Lebanon.
So
I love
like,
Springfield.
yeah, East Newton is
Yeah.
my district,
Yeah.
and that's Newton County.
Yep, exactly where that is.
I'm Lindsay Thompson, I teach high school English and Port Osage, and I'm here by the teacher unions.
I'm Elizabeth Lauber. Excuse me, I was appointed by the speaker. I'm the president of a foundation that deals with economically disadvantaged students and helping them receive education. And I am a mom. Well, I know a lot of us are moms, but I'm just one of those reasons. I'm Mary Carey, resident from Columbia University.
Yeah. Your hair is a bit, you've changed it.
Yeah, dark, used to mix that up.
I won't make any comments now. I'm fighting the highlighting, but I'm not gonna do it.
Jeanette House from West Plains, actually Glenwood, RA, rural school. And I'm here from Missouri Administrators for Rural Education through the superintendents.
I'm Casey Brzezicki. I teach reading in Princess Hall District, and I was appointed by the speaker. St. Charles.
I just met a gal, Betty.
That's a big district.
And I'm Janice Scott. I work at the Heart of Missouri on PVC, at the University of Missouri Columbia.
Hi, Barry.
How you doing,
We went
Barry?
to back to school together. She's just done. I'm not.
Actually, I'm finished.
That's what you are. Man.
That is awesome.
I know.
Actually, you are finished.
I can resist, sorry.
I'm Ann Franklin, and I'm on the school board in Independence, Missouri, and I'm also a retired teacher. Nice.
I'm Mary Della Carter, and I'm several different things part-time. I'm retired from full-time at Blue Springs. I'm the 9 through 12 coordinator right now.
And I know you through Katie Klein.
You do, I know her well,
I've
yeah,
heard a lot
so
of
meeting
praises
with her
about
yesterday.
you.
Well, thank you.
I did a lot of stuff in Missouri,
Yeah.
so.
I'm Tori Grable. I am the literacy curriculum facilitator at Smithville now, and I am the note taker for the group.
Nice.
And we've met everybody.
Yes, we have, I was gonna say, I know you know.
Mary, I'm Kim Finch. I'm retired from Springfield Public Schools, principal, assistant superintendent, former English teacher and counselor.
Nice.
And I'm a professor at Missouri State University in the Education Administration program.
You work with Carrie Franklin?
Yes.
Yeah, I was her coach.
It's like a family reunion.
Yeah.
So who are you?
I've done so many different things, so. I'm Barry Bumgarner, I, grew up in Springfield, so down by Springfield, I've taught, I was a director of a kindergarten for 5 years, I taught 7th, 8th, 9th, I taught at MU while getting my master's and my PhD, elementary and secondary education. I've been part of the Missouri Writing Project, I've published 3 novels, and now I teach at Westminster College, I teach in education. I am the English education department at Westminster, which I love. And now the digital literacy coordinator, so I'm creating a digital
Wow.
literacy major at Westminster, which is very
Wow.
cool. So,
That is cool.
yeah, I'm doing a lot of professional, development, coordinating stuff for Missouri Writing Project too, so, which I love, so that's how I work with Carrie.
So this was just like, I just need one more thing to do.
Yeah, well, Malia contacted me and she said, now that you're a professor and you say you don't work nearly as hard as you did when you were in public school, which I will admit is really true. I'm not having time to go to the bathroom when I taught 8th and 9th grade.
Right.
I have time to go to the bathroom now, so I figured, why not?
Lots of writing project fellows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty then, so, what we are doing right now, and I'm happy to kinda catch you up, and maybe some folks around you will help catch you up as well. I think I sent you the documents, right? Okay. So, we worked through reading literary texts before, now we're working through, reading nonfiction, texts, and what we're doing right now is just making a, brainstorm list of all the things we think could fall under there, so we can try to identify clusters to fall under that strand, and then so we're kind of in the middle of throwing all of that up on our chart paper, so.
I interrupted, sorry.
No, you're fine, no, actually, it was perfect.
I have a question. Analyzing informational text for author bias, does it need to be separate, or does that work with evaluate reasoning as sound and evidence, I suppose, for credibility really?
No, I think it's
Separate?
Yeah. And it goes with point of view. That's really what it goes with. Point of view / point of view author bias, are those not pretty similar?
Well, I feel like, possibly, I also feel like it has to do with credibility and reliability.
Yeah.
Like, how credible is your source, is it a biased source, is it not?
Well, that's evidence, that's not, I mean, that.
Yeah.
So you're like,
Somebody-
looking at the overall piece, is the
Right,
author
I'm talking-
biased or not
right,
biased?
Exactly. Author,
Okay.
what if we combine point of view and bias? I mean,
Okay.
see them as,
Yeah, I
they're
would
very
just like to
similar.
have that word somewhere.
Yeah, I know, I was uncomfortable with point of view in that same place as purpose. I see those point of view
Separate.
bias as a separate one, but
Okay.
that's, maybe it's just.
And we can
Yeah.
pull them apart.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about these, so I'm going back to like an earlier conversation where we're talking, not to get
Sure.
stuck. Just to say, like what's the end skill that we want them to learn? Like, is it, like I would think when we're reading nonfiction texts, it's not limited to like, perhaps like developing logical thinking skills might be part of what you learn from this. Like, is that something we can say is our end goal of a skill? Or should
Well, I would say many of those things that we have up there are our end goals. And so for information literacy, that's
Oh, yeah.
on the
Okay.
left-hand side, and all of those things in argumentation, they need to be able to, and that's, I think, more writing. But I think all of those things that we have up there are end results. I think
Right
So
there,
I'm here
middle on the
for
left-hand side.
critical thinking, but are we thinking of logic?
Well, we put evaluate, reasoning,
Interpret.
logic, we put that, I think that's the second bullet.
Analyze.
Yeah, you just can't see the logical.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm just,
Yeah.
hair splitting maybe, because what I'm trying to get at is what it's going to lead you to think like, not how you look at it.
That depends on the text.
Well,
Yeah, so what do you
and so
want?
what we want to
Okay,
do,
so that's
right,
our
yeah,
text.
so what we wanna do is,
I'm being too.
No,
Yeah.
I want you to
Okay.
say what you're saying in a different way, it's supposed to.
Okay, come back to me, I'm gonna work on this.
And it may have to
Okay.
do with the bias thing too,
Yeah.
that you're thinking.
well.
I mean, I don't know what you're
right.
thinking.
Well, what we
but-
would like to do is be able to help them pull it apart so they can figure out,
Mhm.
do I agree with this, should I learn from it, should I
Right.
accept this, should I not accept it? What about this seems biased, what about it seems logical, what about it seems out in left field? So not,
So they
so
don't
that's,
restrict
that's what we want them to be able to do.
And the thing is, every single text, whatever it is, has a bias. So being able
Right.
to
Yeah.
determine
See,
what the
and to me,
bias is.
I just keep going back.
That's the thing.
I want kids to be able to read nonfiction text the same way. I mean, again,
Yes.
some of the words change, but like it's all about approaching it as a reader, right? Being able to comprehend what you're reading. Then start to think about what are they doing as a writer, right? And analyzing their craft. And then finally, and I like maybe adding that evaluate or synthesize or integrate. I mean, I like the evaluation piece in that third piece too. That idea of you as a researcher now, like how does this piece, like what is being said in this piece? How does it compare to other pieces? Like to me, that model still makes sense, and a lot of the same skills we already came up with make sense. I think they maybe need to be tweaked, but
Okay.
Is that,
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
but so do you
Yeah.
want me to spit them out? I mean, because again, there's about
Well, I think that
dozen on
the
there
thing,
that go
I mean, I think
up
the
here.
things that we put up here, we'll be able to then start to slide over, kinda like we did earlier, that's where that came from, was we just
Right.
slid things underneath our clusters, we said, oh, these things go here, these things go here. So if we continue down this path, it'll allow
Sure.
us to then start shuffling things and
So to that.
that'll be good.
Yeah, determine word meaning in context. We had literal and figurative, I'd add technical as a third.
Yes.
I think we need to define that, and here's why, and this is not intended to be a really mean knock on anybody who came up with the previous glossary that aligned to the current Missouri Learning Standards. But when you look in the glossary currently, the draft, I don't know if it's already been approved, it says technical is like what it technically states, like technically. And that is definitely not what, like technically, and I was like, I was blown away by that, cause my teachers, when we were working through, we were like, well, what does technical really mean? Let's try to figure out what that means so we can pull it apart and figure out how to really teach it well. And, yeah, when we looked at that, we were like, that doesn't seem
I
right,
guess
so.
I meant domain specific, but I think that's not very user friendly either.
No, I just think we need to be
Like-
careful about that term, because
Yeah.
that's how, like, and I don't know if it's still there, because I then ditched that glossary after that, cause I was like, I don't feel like I can rely on it well, when that's the meaning that's included in there, so, cause I knew that's not what it meant, but I wanna make sure that we are careful about what does technical mean, especially if we end up including in technical writing, so then are those interchangeable or are those not interchangeable? So anyway, what were you saying, that I didn't write down, cause I started talking instead of writing?
Determine word meaning in context.
Okay.
And then in parentheses, we had literal and figurative, before. But to me, what definitely stands out, and I'm like, I've always used the word technical to describe it, like it's of that discipline, maybe disciplinary is a better word.
Or content
Yeah,
related.
content specific.
Content
Like
specific.
if you're reading about biology, like what are the
Yes.
technical vocabulary of biology? Like being able to understand like what
Content, words.
Oh, yeah, that's like.
Determine meaning of words in
content
context.
specific.
Domain specific.
Domain specific. I
So
mean,
this is a vocabulary,
standard. Like if
Okay.
you're reading a piece of nonfiction and you're coming across a word you've never heard of before, right? How do you negotiate that?
Right.
Yeah.
Context,
And that's the main
glossary.
difference.
I mean, there's all sorts of skills you could use, right? Group
You know,
words.
those
But
vocabulary
yeah, how do I
skills.
figure out what the hell post is?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to like get technical about technical, but
That's
I
okay.
really, that was a struggle for me, cause I
Mhm.
couldn't get, I really had a hard time getting my teachers to see past this word technical and like say, well, what do we think it means? We think it means of that discipline, right? But it was like, well, it doesn't say that.
A big one on, nonfiction would be determine text structure.
not just even to determine.
Analyze,
Right.
identify and analyze.
And, yeah, identify
They need
and
to understand
analyze.
how it functions.
logical structure.
That
as well.
impact, identify and determine the impact of the tax structure.
You're getting I've written in front of you several times now, so my handwriting is slowly going down the hill. It used to be nicer, now it's like, I can't even write in a straight line.
Still
This
doing
I
it.
just
You
like,
got a ways to go before you hit my level, so you're good.
Determine the function, determine the impact.
The red. Just nasty.
Can't see, around
Is structure the same as features? No.
No.
Structures are very specific, like constant effect.
We've had this
Yeah,
argument.
we've had
Oh.
argument before.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I asked.
No,
And
it's
they're
okay.
more, they're more like those old
Text.
modes though.
Features fit within structure, right? Am I saying this right? Structure is a bigger blanket.
Yes.
Text features are one element of structure,
Right.
but so is like paragraphing and
Thesis,
organization.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Glossary, footnote.
Yes,
So that's all under structure.
like
Yes.
summarizing.
Even captions,
Summarizes
right,
what
captions
we
of.
Well, we do want summarizing up there.
Yeah, we do want
Just said.
summarizing.
Yeah,
Summarize text.
summarizing, yeah.
It's probably even more important in nonfiction. Yeah.
Okay?
Recognize significant details and draw logical inferences, which is just for the other one as well.
Recognize significant details and draw logical inferences.
Mm-hmm.
What, clarification, what do you mean recognizes, specific details?
Significant
Oh,
details.
significant.
Yeah, in other
example.
words, like that Ravinsky what
Important.
to notice thing.
Relevant.
Yeah.
It's
Important.
a
The
lot of
impact.
locating, you know,
Right,
locating
the important information.
Right.
That's what it is.
Got it.
We say like hypothesize and
Which is my
conclusions
goal,
or
each and every day, over and over.
Right.
for nonfiction.
Significant.
It is.
Well, we
as
put,
opposed to
we put that
Right.
right there, draw
If
logical.
we're gonna choose,
Okay,
we
that
make a
makes
difference in
hypothesize.
here for whatever we know, if she's got to would choose, but.
We have for literary texts, read a wide range of literary texts appropriate for a grade level. I would say the same here, read a wide range of nonfiction, I mean, again, there's that technical word again, but.
Oh, to understand satire.
Right, and also
It's my
on
goal
that
every year.
I know, that's why I was gonna say a totally separate one maybe, but maybe you go with point of view of that other one where you have point of view and bias, but tone. What about recognizing
Nonfiction
tone?
text.
Yeah, recognize
Appropriate for
tone.
grade level.
Cause the satire thing,
on that, read a variety of read a variety of texts, that would be difficult to measure. You might wanna put comprehend in there also, read and comprehend.
That's a good point, yeah. So yeah.
Read slash comprehend.
You just read it.
I mean,
They do.
because, they could read a lot of things,
I
and
used
just
to
put
say-
Gary,
categories, and
some
they
of
can do
us
really well on
said
that
we wanted to
standard.
put, you to put recognize tone.
Yes, tone, word choice,
does-
syntax.
Well, I think recognize tone is by
I
itself.
think I'm gonna have a lot more.
Well, I mean, you don't recognize
Uh,
word choice.
Yeah.
I was trying to decide if I should
It contributes
swap
to
them
it.
Does
into
it
this
go,
one,
does it
or-
go anywhere, the
think I'm
tone,
gonna-
does it fit under any category?
I'll just.
Just keep going.
What was it that you wanted me to put, I'm sorry?
Recognize tone.
Recognize tone.
And I think that we have to have that site relevant text-based evidence to demonstrate understanding.
Yeah.
It needs to be above the board.
Absolutely.
Site.
Relevant.
I don't know why it's capitalized either. I'm not really sure what happened there. What's the rest of it?
Text-based evidence to demonstrate understanding.
Thank you.
Inferences?
I have, oh, it's okay.
Question assumptions. I'm still thinking about it.
Didn't I have inferences on here? I thought I did. Why not?
Well, I
Have
mean, not
conclusion.
did we word it by it?
I think I was supposed to put inferences there. That's what you told me to put.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, maybe.
yes, make logical conclusions and make inferences,
That's
because a conclusion can be an inference.
all.
Well, and it we were talking about earlier, about reading a variety of texts, you know, fiction and nonfiction, and drawing conclusions and comparing and contrasting those. Is that something we address in here, or in the other, or?
Well, there's a third category called integrate ideas and see relationships. Is that right, up there?
That's what we have for reading literary.
Where we're going.
And so to Carrie's point, right, like synthesize information from multiple texts, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so we wanna add synthesize information from multiple texts.
Anybody does.
Compare and contrast texts in different forms.
Which is really important in nonfiction.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Especially with documents,
Yeah, yeah.
papers.
Now, this is infographic.
Synthesize information from multiple texts. Is that what
And-
you're doing? I am not holding on to this.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's, you don't need to be sorry, I'm sorry, it's like, it's gone. Synthesize information from multiple texts, right?
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
we had with that, like the compare and contrast texts in different forms. And
Well, do you wanna
That's a
call it
different
text or
one.
resources, digital or print resources?
Those are
I think
texts.
text.
Yeah.
I think we
Alright,
just keep it
text.
text.
Consistent.
And,
then
you know,
define
that's, I
text
feel like
well.
that's one of those things that when you talk about a glossary, you have to define what text is.
Yes.
Cause now text is everything.
And we really need to make sure that we push for the digital and print.
Oh, for sure, oh, yeah.
Cause if we
Right.
take it out of our standards, it's gonna be gone.
Well, I think everything, like, you know, like I said the first day, that when I listen to my sports radio and they're advertising on the radio, I still need to read, even though I'm not reading with my eyes, I still need to
Right.
read, what is the bias, what is the,
Right.
you know, what are they trying to get me to do? What are the rhetorical strategies they're employing, or the
Right.
devices that they're using, and so, that, I still have to do it even though I'm not reading it with my eyes. Okay, so,
Well, Elizabeth brought up a good point that ties into that, Carrie, is judging the argument and specific claims.
It's evaluating.
Yeah.
Or taking it a step further. Is that like analyzing the evidence? I was gonna ask if we, like, I know we have cited up
How do
there.
you go any farther than evaluating? Evidence to
Credibility,
determine the value of
reliability.
it.
I guess after you evaluate it, to me, you form a conclusion, like you evaluate lots of things and then
Oh,
you.
you've already formed one by the time you evaluate
I
it.
think I think what she's wanting to, in just a conversation, tell me if I'm wrong, is for the students to, synthesize and make a judgment about
Right.
whatever the topic is. So if they read 7 texts on something as silly as, school uniforms, for them then to be able to say, here's what I think about.
so it's really
Well,
able to
then
make their
just
own
the
claim.
own
So now I make my own claim, so it's actually, it's after the synthesis is to support my own claim then, right? I've read all this, I've evaluated it all, now
How
my
about
claim is,
synthesize and evaluate?
and here's the
information
here's the
from all
evidence
the
I
text?
have. I see what you're saying, is that next step is, not only do I evaluate it as good or bad, because of all these reasons, it's then, okay, I've read and read and read, now,
What do I do with that?
what do I think? Here's my claim and here's my evidence.
Could you add it on to the end of that, evaluate evidence for credibility and reliability to make effective decisions? You want them to do something with that evaluation, right?
I do,
Well-
and I'm not sure if I'm taking it too far, but that's what I want,
Well-
because I want, and I want a,
Right.
like you were saying, some sort of a judgment, because I want I want an independent thought,
So,
an original thought out of
Which is
that.
the
That's what the
you would add-
synthesis is.
Yeah, it is.
That's on the back of
Yeah, it is really this
Well,
piece right here.
And to me, that's where you cross into the writing standards or the speaking
Yeah.
standards, right? So I've read all of this, and now
Apply it.
I'm communicating my opinion because I've done research. Am I making sense? Like, when we get to the writing standards, I think what you're, well, no, I think what you're
No.
saying is
It's just
that
how
will
you
take
articulate it.
action in the form of writing or speaking.
Right.
Like.
This is why it's
Like,
so
for
important to
example,
keep
a
people
writing
connected.
standard could be use what you've read and researched to form your own claim on a topic or something.
Yes.
And that would be like a writing standard that we could then do, cause that would be measuring how well you could do that. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, because we like that, because I mean,
We like it.
Because we do want,
We're thinking ours.
we do want an independent judgment of
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. Okay, so are we in agreement that like the synthesis happens and then we do something either through speaking or through writing?
And when we get to writing, that will naturally come up when we
Yeah,
get
it
to
should.
that point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's such a, like, you keep looking at the end, which is a
Mhm.
great perspective to keep in mind. So like, at the end of all that, that's really nice that you can do all that, but then
Right.
what are you going to do with it? So you didn't do it for the sake of, you did it to think about something and make a judgment on something, or arrive at your own new thinking, so that's really an excellent,
How about
excellent point.
analyze how the overall structure of the text contributes to the, explanation, analysis, or argument, assuming that you know those types of texts. I mean, that's about all I can think of.
So
Yeah,
is,
determine impact,
Of the text
Yeah.
structure.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you can
Okay,
determine
you've got
impact.
that.
Does that work?
And analyze the impact of
Right.
text structure. Well, yeah, it does.
Okay,
That
you
works.
said
I just
compare and
don't
contrast
know.
Related
something,
to
I didn't get that.
synthesize, yeah, compare and contrast texts in different forms, and compare and contrast texts that address similar themes.
Or like analyze to be able to support or oppose something that is,
Yes.
to be able to make that opinion.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like it's like, and again, it's almost, it's approaching it as a writer here, it's like, so, look, the same message is being made through an infographic, through an article, through a radio broadcast, like, what are the, again, kind of thinking media literacy there, like, how does the medium impact the message? I mean, again, you can kind of compare, kind of, to Elizabeth's point, then you have, synthesize what you've heard from all of those things to kind of create your own.
So,
Sorry.
I don't know that you said this.
Different
So different
forms,
formats, different forms.
formats, whatever you wanna call it.
Different media.
In the literary ones, we call it different genres of media. Different forms, we had in parentheses genres of media, I said the same, I mean,
So you can
different
at least
media.
put media.
Yeah.
Okay.
Such as like documents.
Yeah, exactly.
Want me to put a such as?
I think it
Sure.
Primary and
should.
secondary sources.
Yeah.
Well, I just, yeah, I mean.
Digital,
there's
print.
Tons, but yeah, you could do just,
You could do
Historical
video clip, you
documents.
could do a
Historical documents.
text, you could do a.
such a rude thing. Infographic. There's so much limitless.
The one that we, from the other list that I don't think is up there yet is analyze how the cultural context informs the text. We do have a thing about author's bias, but that's, cultural context is broader than that. So, analyze how the cultural context informs the text.
Going back to your founding fathers.
Exactly.
Must be a little long of some sort.
For-
The thing on there that I see, on that determine the main idea, that might wanna be expanded to, how does the author develop the main idea? So not only but determine, but, analyze how the main idea is developed.
And would that be like using some of the other things, or would that
Yeah,
just?
like
I don't
text
know.
structure.
Like using structure, using, tone, using reasoning, right?
How about the idea of just delineating the argument? Is that what you mean?
No,
No? You
there are
don't
certain
do-
techniques that authors use in order to clearly convey the main idea of the text.
Such as?
Well, could be repetition, could be parallel structure.
Okay, I
could be
think we have
subtopics.
those up
Historical
there.
devices and rhetorical strategies?
Yeah.
I do like adding the verb delineate though to reasoning, delineate and evaluate reasoning. Like, to be able to
Yeah.
evaluate it, you need to know what are they saying, like,
Right.
what are their arguments.
Just don't put Trace in there.
Don't portray, I mean, situation with 10-foot tall, unless it's a kindergarten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or be like,
Uh-huh.
I do know,
thing.
You know how it is.
well, I know like in, for example, in, literary text, they'll not only ask for theme, but explain how the theme develops.
Yeah, I'm with you, I'm just trying to think
It's
about
not
how.
So,
It's just-
instead of just saying main idea, don't you want them to
It's-
explain how the
Well, that's
author
what I
develops
said
the main
earlier about the
idea?
development of the whole
That theme really
structure.
belongs
Signature
more
got,
in
you know,
Well, we
identify and
do.
analyze text
I guess
structure.
my question would be, is it obvious that those two are connected?
Is it?
I don't know, that's
Or
the
is
reason
our
I came
job
up
to
with
make
the
that
other
work?
one, is that's, it's
I
more
wouldn't-
like.
Analyzing how an author's
Where we
ideas
do
or
that.
claims are developed.
Remedial.
Uh-huh, makes sense.
Yeah, like it.
Yeah.
Do we just
need to have a read?
Yeah.
We've got that.
Well, we've got
We've got
that.
the read or write, read and comprehend a wide range of nonfiction texts.
Read and comprehend. Okay, cause I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, we just need to read
Sharp at the
something
very
in reading.
Which is also Summarize has that.
Right.
You've read
Yeah,
it.
read it
But I
now
think in
while it's
a,
reading.
in a, maybe 6,
Yeah.
you know, just being explicit in that.
Right.
That they need to be reading independently for, you know, a certain amount of time.
Okay. Are we at a point where we can take, cause I'm out of paper. So.
Well, then I guess we are.
I mean, I can add paper, but. Where we can take this and say, okay, what should our strand, no,
Clusters.
sorry, clusters, I'm not good on the lingo yet, I gotta work on it.
Yeah.
Where we can take those and put them into clusters.
Could we look at our clusters that we have for our, literature to see if they fit under those clusters?
Sure.
Right?
That is fine. So there they are,
I
in lovely color.
Can we fit all of those underneath those three?
Let's see.
I would like to.
I just think it'd be so
I think
much
we can
easier if we could
pretty
use the
easily,
same
actually.
clusters.
And
Now-
approach it as a reader,
I
as a
would
writer,
personally
as a
like to
researcher.
wordsmith the third one, the black one, to say something like, you can please chip in here, but something like integrate and evaluate ideas within / among texts. Get rid of the relationships, I mean, relationships I think is implied by integrate. Does that make sense?
Say it again.
Integrate and evaluate ideas within / among text. So in other words, within a text, and then also like comparing multiple texts, like on the same topic.
That kinda gets us to where we were talking about, what was kind of one of those things where like, well, we think it happens within one, right, but sometimes it's, we really want them to connect all, so.
Right.
So that kinda gets us to that point where we couldn't get last time.
I feel like that's what we were trying to
Within-
articulate
in
last
among,
time, we
yeah.
just didn't,
It is, yeah,
that didn't capture it very well.
cause we really wanted to articulate that sometimes we can integrate ideas, relationships, which within one text. And then
Want me to say it again, or not like it?
Do you want me to
Integrate
write it?
and evaluate ideas within / among text. To get rid of the C relationships among. And evaluate.
Yeah, because we can't force them to see relationships. We can get them to evaluate and hope they see the relationships.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I just,
I don't think we need the within part either in that one, because
integrate
it's
and
already the
evaluate
other two.
well, I'm not sure that we need evaluate, because that implies that
Yeah.
everything underneath there is going to be evaluate, and I'm not sure in 6th grade that that's the case.
When you analyze the craft and structure and interpret, you
So
are
we're
doing it within the
evaluating.
text. Well, yeah, you can have the parts work together.
I mean, we're integrating ideas and integrating ideas
Yeah.
among texts, but I'm not sure that we're always going to evaluate
Okay,
every single day.
exactly, yeah. And maybe it was inherent to do that,
Yeah.
but then it needs to be identified.
It would it be every day?
Oh,
I mean,
it's
if this is just a,
Right.
I mean, it wouldn't be addressed unless every single standard said evaluate within
Yeah,
that.
I guess if I'm going to compare and contrast two texts, I may not ask students, every time I do that, I may not ask students to evaluate them.
Sure.
And if that verb is in that cluster,
Okay.
On the
maybe
heading.
misleading.
right, and I'm thinking about 6th and 7th
You're right,
graders.
they do.
So what
I'm
about
not sure.
integrate and connect ideas and information between texts?
You wanna leave a mind in case you have multiple beyond two.
Why do we need a integrate and something?
Yeah.
Why don't we just integrate it?
ideas
Integrate
within among text.
ideas and information among and between texts or?
I think it's more relationships, because how does this text relate to this one in terms of the argument it's making, or the information it's providing about the topic? No, I don't get that. It's,
So
you
how
like
about
identify
this?
relationships better than see? I mean, I don't care.
I would just
We've
get
been
rid
using
of C
identify a lot.
relationships, I guess, is starting.
How about we, for the moment, leave it the way it is,
Mhm.
if that's okay.
We didn't think about it.
Yeah, that- like you said, that's
let's
the
go back
level
to
of
the
work.
original question of, can we look at those and, I guess the question is, do we need to create 3 new, or however many, 12? We wanna limit ourselves, so we need to be careful.
Right.
clusters, they create new clusters under nonfiction? Or is what we have identified here, do they fall under there? So I think take a
Yes.
moment to think that through, and, I will too.
We can, if we number those 1, 2, and 3, we can then up here put which number in it.
Yeah, I was like, if I start circling things, then I might be in a, I'm gonna have a problem.
Yeah.
Well, I don't mind that, I don't mind numbering them to see if that works, cause I was trying to figure out what's I could put a little dot next to them, how about that?
Yeah.
If
How
at
about-
all
I'll do that.
possible, if they relate to the literary text elements, I'd suggest we put them right in the same spot, if we could.
Say that again?
If they relate to the literary text, elements that we already have, we should probably just put them in the same spot. If
You mean the clusters we already have?
No,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, if those,
Just saying both
if
standards.
those,
If they parallel
if they
then-
parallel, I would suggest
Oh.
putting them in the same
Right.
spot.
Right, okay, we were saying
So
the same
if we
thing.
number those little bullets,
Yeah, so if I just put a dot next to them, how about that? I'll put like a colored dot that aligns with this, only black will be red because we're red and black.
okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Got it.
Black is red. Got it? Red is black, black is red. Got it?
Yeah,
Okay.
you just number
So,
1, 2, 3.
well, I could number them. Okay, I'll number them. 1, 2, 3.
So,
But I wanted to put dots next to them in different colors. And now I'm seeing
You
the
put
value of color.
numbers next to them in different colors?
It doesn't, now I'm just having fun.
so if we went down the reading literary texts and we looked for the version of nonfiction
Okay.
and wrote it down right over the top, they would be in the same order, right? Do we have a version of site relevant text-based evidence to demonstrate understanding? Is there a version up there?
I think it's actually the same
What are
thing.
you reading? Cite relevant text-based
Okay.
evidence to demonstrate understanding.
Yeah.
So does that fall under number 1?
Number 1.
Yeah. Do you have a version of that?
Yeah.
That's right.
All right.
Doing-
Cluster
So
one.
then you just type it in.
Okay.
All right, that's number 1.
We don't have interpret graphs, charts, et cetera, that's
No. All right, well,
specific
hang
to
on just a
nonfiction.
minute.
Oh, I was just going back.
Do
to
we
that.
have a version of determined word meaning in context, literal, figurative, do we have that version?
Yes.
All right, that's a 2.
No, it's a 1.
No, well, it's a 2 bullet.
No, it's a 1.
Well,
It's
it's a
two-
cluster
two
one.
different things.
Okay.
It's
Same
under,
cluster.
it's the
Just
second
use
thing
green.
under cluster one.
Use green and put a 2 by it.
Number 2, cluster one.
A 1A, one, she's like.
Yeah.
I got you.
you
All
guys
right.
know.
Do we have a version of determined author's purpose?
Yes.
All
But,
right.
yes.
Put a 3 by it.
So I know that
One.
there was a question of,
1C.
I'm just gonna put 1, cause
Alright.
it doesn't really matter at this point.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, we
it
can put it in
does.
order later.
Well, I mean, as far as, I see what you're saying, and I'm with you, but as far as, like, all the green ones will go under, all the green, all the
Put 'em
pink
in the
twos
same
will go
order.
under.
But it should be in this, occur in the same order,
Okay,
if
we'll do
possible.
that.
We can do that.
1A.
This is
one
not
B,
hard
there you
for me
go.
to do.
It's easy.
1C.
Thank you, you're
All right.
patient.
We're rolling.
Thank you, I have to be angry.
Okay.
with
But,
this.
what I'm
Just
gonna say
forgive
is,
me.
I just wanna make sure, I mentioned,
old, Patty.
Maridella was a little concerned, and I'm not sure, I need to think through whether or not I have the same concern or not. That this maybe doesn't all go in one thing together, so
That's all right.
we'll
We
need to think
divide
about,
it up.
I'm just saying that for,
Yeah.
putting myself out there on the record.
We
Alright.
divide it up.
Moving on.
So,
All right,
so
identify
why
main
don't-
idea.
Wait a minute. So why don't, I mean, at what point do we have that conversation? Because it seems like we have that conversation now.
Why would?
Like dividing
Well,
up
it's
the
up to
point
you.
of view and
Alright.
bias.
And I,
Yeah, it's fine, either way.
my argument for putting point of view, bias, tone, those things together is that they are a means that is used to develop purpose. I mean, you know, a
You're
lot of
thinking
things
you
use
take these two out and add them here?
or they're more related to tone in my
We
view.
had
Point
a-
of view is the
we had
attitude
a-
you take, and the attitude you take is the author.
Okay.
And in literary text, we have a separate one for narrative point of view. We have one for what is author's
Right,
purpose,
this is the
and we
reader
have one for
version
narrative
versus
point of
the-
view.
Okay, but so then
author
would,
version.
is this a separate all on its own?
In-
Or does it fall, but in nonfiction, is it separate all on its own, or does it fall under tone?
I would say it would fall under analyzing craft and structure, approaching the text as a writer. how is the writer approaching
Right.
this? What point of view are they
But I mean,
using?
my question is it a separate bullet all on its own?
Let's put it as
Determining point of view bias?
separate one for now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Get a different color marker. And,
I understand.
Well,
We
isn't
should
bias,
put
isn't
also
bias,
goes
doesn't
around
bias
instead of
fit
candy.
with credibility, validity?
yeah, I think they're related.
Alright, doesn't bias fit in with credibility?
They all fit in with each other.
Evaluate sources for bias, credibility, reliability.
That's sources, not the writer's viewpoint.
Okay, so I'm putting determine.
That's two different things. Yeah.
I think the bias comes with reasoning, personally. Like, are they using reasoning that is biased or not?
Okay, but
But I
that's
think it's also.
that's the author,
Where's
right?
the author coming
Yeah.
from?
Yeah.
That's
You're
not,
talking about the difference
alright,
between the
that's,
writer
and the
and-
evidence that the writer uses.
Yes.
Okay, do you see my,
Yes.
That's good.
now am I supposed to do something with that one? Is that supposed to make it green?
Not
Not yet.
yet.
Okay.
Alright, so on that, identify the, theme.
We have identified main
Main
idea.
Main
idea.
idea,
Main
alright,
idea.
put a D by it, 1D. Summarize text, 1E. Recognize significant details and draw logical inferences.
One,
Yes.
yeah, right
Yeah.
there.
All
One
right.
F.
That would be an E, 1E.
F. One F, I'm gonna keep you honest now.
Alright. Read and comprehend a wide range of text appropriate for grade level. Alright, that's what now, G?
Just to read. Can you even read that?
Alright.
I don't even know what that's. I'm like, what did I write there? I don't even know.
G, okay.
Your writing's
And
good.
so all of those skills, right, have to do with basic comprehension, right? The
Right.
going back to like, what do we do first? You have to be able to
Alright,
read the
so
document.
I'm gonna
Is
go
there
down
anything
to
else?
cluster 2.
Wait, okay.
Okay.
Wait.
Does anything else go under comprehension?
Yes.
Well, interpret text, are we putting the graphs charts in a different format?
I could
Okay.
see that
It
going under
does.
there, or I could see it being part of the comparing and contrasting text in different formats
it's-
and media.
Just like the word says interpret, it's reading.
I mean, I think those are
Yeah.
two separate
Yeah.
things to me.
Comprehend and interpret
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
text.
interpret, you have to be able to interpret the
Right.
media
Right.
format before you
Mhm.
can draw any
Yeah.
conclusions, I think
Yeah.
they
So
have
this
to be
is your
separate.
basic comprehension?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that would be-
Comprehend and interpret.
Okay, so
H.
you feel like that's, okay.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Okay.
that's 1H.
Although now saying that, as the graphic novel guy, I would argue that's also an element of literary text.
It can be.
When there's illustration involved,
But
you
that's
need to
when
be
you
able to
have-
interpret the visual elements
Then you
of
can
fictional
slash
text
that and
too.
put,
Or
graphics.
theater as, I'm sorry, I'm not going there right now.
But you can
But
slash
there is a
that.
visual element to literary text as well. So
And you
that,
could slash that down and put graphics too,
I'm
down
just saying we
below.
might need to add that. That's right, I'm saying.
Okay. What about determining the claim of an argument?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
That's
part of-
comprehend and interpret.
Is that a subset of main idea though? I mean, like, if the piece is argumentative in nature,
Feels
the
like
main
it.
idea
Yes.
is going to be the claim.
Yeah.
And
But
if
it
the piece is
doesn't have to
not.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't?
Yeah.
An informational text doesn't have to be an
Well, that's what I'm
argument.
saying, it's
Yeah.
claim a subsection of main idea, like.
So if it
No.
is argument text,
If it's
wouldn't
an
your main
argument.
It's
idea be
called
your
the claim.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's what I'm
what you're
saying.
asking is, does it belong in one?
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
We're
I would
asking
do those two
that.
merged together, that's what I'm saying.
You're
I don't
right,
think they
it
merge
is a
together.
subset of
I don't think they
determined
do
main idea.
either. If it's a purely informational text and explanatory, it'd be main idea, but
Right.
analysis
But it
text
can
and
be
an
a
argument
subset.
text have claims.
And I guess then if you think
Yeah,
about,
no, nothing.
No.
if you think about it in terms of like how the ACT assesses it, or any really assessment that assesses main idea, it could just be a little like a passage of a passage, right? Like a piece of, so a paragraph from a larger text where maybe you do have an overall claim, but maybe that we're looking for the main idea of that. So maybe being very careful about what does main idea look like across the grade levels. I don't know, I think that might be helpful to thinking about it in terms of smaller chunks of text rather than the overall text.
Right, but if it's smaller chunks, it's under the evaluate the reasoning, right? Am I crazy here? Like, if it's. if
Not on
it's
an assessment
at
where
the-
it says, what is the main idea of
Right,
this
I'm just saying, like,
passage?
how we're defining claim, right? If we're defining claim as like the main idea of an argumentative piece, then to me, it's main idea. And if you're
Right.
arguing like, no, there's a
Mm-mm.
subsets of claims that are being made throughout the piece, then it would fall under, but that's the reasoning that's going on. I don't know, I don't care to argue this, but
The only thing I worry about is you.
Still may
I don't
not
like it
using-
as a standalone standard because you're not always reading argumentative text.
No.
Right, that's true.
That's what I'm saying. I
Not-
feel
not
like
in
it's a
our area.
subset of a broader standard.
Well, that's why I think they should be separate,
Me too.
because
So
when
it doesn't apply.
But it's,
Yeah.
it's
For example, you might have a claim, if you were writing about global warming, you might have a claim of fact or a claim of definition or a claim of cause and effect. But your main idea is, we need to do something about this. To me, those are different.
and it, but, yeah.
Claims can come inside of the main idea. You know, in other words, you make various claims to support a big idea or a larger claim, such as, we need a policy that makes us better than China.
Well, and I like what Carrie said too, when you are given just a really small excerpt from even an argumentative text, you're not going to evaluate what that claim is in a paragraph. It's gonna be more about what's the author's main idea.
Yeah.
I just worry about when we think about 6 through 12,
Yeah.
that if you lump the two together, then it makes it feel like, we would have to do a really good job of spelling it out, but it makes it feel like it's always about the whole piece.
Okay, and I
as
get
opposed
that
to
too. I
that
do.
smaller, which,
Yeah.
I mean, as we move through all levels,
Right.
we want them to be able to do both, right? Like, so we
Right,
could-
right.
So that's the only reason I worry about putting them together, is that then you send a message of, it's always about comparing.
So if you leave them to both there, would it not be logical just to put the one underneath the other? I mean,
Oh,
would they
yeah,
be right next to
yeah.
each other?
I was just asking, my original question was, does this not fall under comprehend?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah,
It-
but
it's
then-
fine, it's a
It
great-
does fall under.
And honestly, as we start to develop the progression of the standards, then we can determine if it makes sense for those two to remain standalone, or if they should be something that is combined later on, probably. No? Yes? Cause I think that it's possible that as we start to develop it, we can go, wow, these look almost exactly the
Right.
same. Why would we have two separate? Why don't we make it one?
Well, if you're
And
just
it's like
determining
that
the
with-
claim, it's
What
under
you're saying
comprehend.
is-
Well, even the determine the author's point of view and bias, it should, I mean, if we're going to say that in that standard, students just need to be able to identify.
Yes.
And determine what it is, then if determine main idea goes in comprehend and interpret, then determine author's point of view should go there as well.
Right.
And
Just
just being able
identify.
to evaluate how the author explained that bias or what bias the author used in terms of reasoning or evidence
Mhm.
goes under craft and structure.
Right.
So I would say that determine the claim and determine author's point of view of bias, those all are ones.
Yes.
Okay. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, that makes a
But
lot
I
of sense.
have a question. I think my question through. Can
Because
you-
the clusters we have are to figure out what it says.
No,
and
yeah, I
that's-
totally get that. My
Okay.
question is, can it, without getting to that next level of looking at it as a writer, can you figure out what the bias is? Without knowing how it's conveyed? Like I'm wondering, do you have to know how it's conveyed in order to know what the bias is, or do you just know there's a bias? I don't know, that's why I'm asking the question, so, cause I feel like they're really closely connected,
I think
like.
on our level, you determine it as you read it
Okay, every
first.
level.
You don't analyze and then you bias. I mean, it kind of hits you.
So it really is part of comprehending the text. I don't see the bias.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it does, it all goes back to what to notice.
Or what they leave out,
Noticing the right
what's
stuff.
omitted,
Okay.
what's not there.
Okay,
that's
so it really is about comprehension, okay, I
Mhm.
just was trying to, I was just thinking, so the next question would be, which would get us to the next level of standards, would be, how do you know? And then that's when we look at the craft, is that what, right?
It's not even how do you know, but how is this put together to do that?
Right, so, well, I mean,
'Cause you
right,
know by
how do you
reading
know
it.
that's the author's bias, what does the author do to make you, okay, I'm good, I just needed that talk out, sorry, it took longer. H? that all that falls under comprehension?
Probably tone does too.
I would just change the verb, I don't think
We had
recognize
that,
tone should be a standard, I would say analyze how the author uses tone.
Isn't it though? Okay.
I don't know.
Word choices.
Right, now how do you know
structure, It's
that?
all that stuff.
Or establishes tone.
But tone is conveyed by all of those craft things.
Yeah,
But it's still part of comprehension. I mean, it's like the essential
yeah, so
comprehension.
identifying the tone is a comprehension
Recognizing
thing,
tone
but
is comprehension.
analyzing how you know that is.
Right.
And so on the
So should it
literary
be
one, what we wrote was
analyze?
identify and analyze
should be
Yes,
green.
tone,
which
word
makes
choice, and
sense.
syntax.
Which makes sense, you could put it down there.
So it should have analyze on it?
Yeah,
Identify
it
and
says
analyze.
identify and analyze, tone, word choice, syntax.
I'd say the same thing about author's point of view too, that's how we,
Yeah.
that's how we did it on this.
I guess
Identify.
I'm wondering, yeah, my question is, and I know we just, maybe I didn't understand why we decided the author's point of view in determining that. Is that just based on your reading as a comprehension level as a reader? Or is that based on diving into word choice and the syntax and how they've done it? So I mean,
That was my question.
but
With literary text, again, we put it, I determine and analyze.
Right,
Point of view.
identify and analyze, identify and analyze, identify and analyze.
because we did it in both, in the literary.
But we moved it to,
Yeah.
we have determine author's purpose and comprehension, but then we have identify and analyze narrative point of view in craft.
And it's a good idea to put those together, because many times when teachers write test questions, they ask them to analyze something, and many times they realize the student hadn't even identified it before they're jumping into the analyzation. You know, explain how the author develops the, tone, and then they go into this long explanation, and they realize the student hadn't
They
even
don't even know
specified.
what it is.
Yeah,
Oops.
so it's a good idea to put, you know, like.
So, I need you to take me back to where we actually are.
So I'm still
I got lost.
questioning why one I goes under comprehend and
Okay,
interpret.
Yes.
why this goes under comprehend and not under the craft, okay.
And I think it's
So-
just because we left the word analyze out of what we
Okay.
put on the board. Like, we would have said determine and analyze an author's point of view and bias. That would be a
it's
craft structure.
For example, if I give my juniors, 2 articles on the same subject, one from NPR and one from a Fox News source, I would expect them to be able to look at both of those things, just look at them, and be able to determine that there is clear bias in both. That is a comprehend and interpret skill for me, for them just to be able to say, what I'm reading is biased, just to know that. But then the next step is for them to analyze that bias, and that goes into their reasoning and evidence. So the Fox News source, they use evidence that comes from where? What type of evidence is it? The NPR news source, what type of evidence is it? Where does it come from?
Right. No, I understand, maybe it's the wording to me in that you're determining the author's point of view or bias.
So you need to add an analyze to it? Is that
Well,
what you
no, I
mean?
mean, I understand what you're saying, and I get the determine part of it, but maybe it's the author's part of it that's throwing me off. Maybe it's just, you know, to determine the bias
Of the text?
of the text.
And I'm coming from an efficiency standpoint, like, if you have determine up here and analyze down here and evaluate down here the same skill 3 times, suddenly you have 150 standards that teachers are asked to teach. Why not lump it together into one single standard? You have to evaluate or to analyze it, you have to identify it, but why separate those as 2 separate things?
So like as a
That was what I was gonna ask.
as a middle school teacher, for me, I just want them to be able to summarize that there is bias in
Right.
it, that because the author left something out, or they didn't back up their opinion, they just shoved an opinion in there and here you go. And so from my
You
standpoint.
still have the how.
have to
But that's
Yes.
where the vertical progression will come in, right? Because it's that skill will look very different from
It's
a
gonna
12th
look
grader
different from
versus a 6th
grade,
grader.
because I'm just having
But we
them
still
say,
need to
well, that's just an opinion.
Organize it in the same place.
So, but I guess when we think about point of view and bias, especially bias, what we're thinking about is in service of really of the analysis, because who cares if you can identify, yes, there's bias, no, there doesn't appear to be bias, like that's nice, right, but
There's
that's
always
not
bias.
really, yeah, there's always bias, so
Right.
really it's the how and why that matters, right?
I think that's that's why they left authors in there. In other words, determine what
Right.
the bias is in this text.
Right, but it really doesn't matter what it is, it's the how and the why that matters, right? Doesn't it? Like, why would they write it like that? Why would they leave out something? Why would they,
Not supported.
why would they,
Well,
yeah.
that's distinct though from determining what it is.
Right.
Right, no, I understand what you're saying, but I feel like that what we have up here is not enough. Like,
Okay.
it's leaving it at that very basic,
Okay, so just have it determine
we
and
just,
analyze.
just determine if there's bias or not,
But
okay,
once
big
we
deal.
start going to that alignment, that's
Right.
where we can
Right.
each add in,
Yeah.
okay, so for our middle school people,
Mhm.
we can add in what is,
Right.
you know, age appropriate for a middle schooler, and then we move on to, okay, high school, what does it look, and again, that goes back to my passion for having that meaningful progression.
Yes.
Right.
This is an excellent example of what that
Right, but it
should look
probably
like.
doesn't live in comprehension.
I think it does, because I really think they have to really think about that and comprehend to know, like, my kids have to go back and think, well, this is an opinion, and they're drawing back on that fact and opinion in their head, so, I don't know what I'm saying.
Go back to the students who can't do the analysis of craft and structure, but do get the bias. You ask them, what is the
Right.
bias, and they'll tell you.
They'll say, well, it's not fair, at
Yeah,
the lower
well, that's
level,
good. So-
they'll say, well, that's not fair because,
Are you saying recognize bias?
Yeah,
Or just
At a
identify
lower-
So
it.
recognizing bias at a lower level, but then analyzing a text for bias.
at a higher level,
Is at a higher
they have
level,
to know how to
right? Is that
recognize
right?
it before they can analyze it.
Right.
So I guess what I'm wondering is then because we want them to analyze it, is what we have here, because we're looking at it in terms of
Right.
whatever,
Well, trying to
broader,
determine where to put
broader,
it.
yeah, so if it's supposed to be broader, should it be more analyzed, but then the way it's written,
Not be.
the progression
Yes.
starts us at that lower level of recognizing and
Right.
identifying it.
Which I still think that's a comprehension piece.
Well, and the next step is that evaluate reasoning and evaluate evidence. I mean, both of those things play into the author's point of view and bias. It just isn't explicitly stated.
Well,
And
and
when
like
you're-
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. When you're evaluating reasoning and evidence, it has to include bias.
But like, your point is that you have to identify it before you can analyze it, but if our whole purpose, our end goal is for them to be able to analyze it, then the first step would be for them to recognize it, right? But we wouldn't wanna put it up in comprehend and then move it down to the craft, we wanna leave it there and say that the progression of this skill to get them to the end goal of analyzing it starts with recognizing it, and then this, and then that, right?
Would it be helpful if we just took the verbs off the cluster titles? So like craft and structure would be like, because then you're not having this vertical progression debate, right? If the middle cluster is craft and structure, whether you're determining a craft and structure feature or you're analyzing a craft and structure feature, you're evaluating a craft and structure feature, that would vary by like grade level.
Well,
I vote for leaving analyze.
I do.
We don't want them just to be able to identify a metaphor. If they can't analyze its significance in the text, we're
Right,
gonna
but see, to me, that's why this is frustrating, that then we're talking about, we want them to be able to identify bias, we want them to be able to identify a laundry list of other things.
Why don't you just put
Bias is
identify
not
and analyze?
a discrete thing like a metaphor.
Sure.
It's different.
If you put identify and or analyze, you can do both. Let the
But
teacher
why
do
put
both.
it as it progresses
Do the
and
and
it
or,
shifts?
and then
Right,
it gives-
exactly.
Well, then you wouldn't see that
Well,
vertical progression.
But you're not gonna be leaving it off, you would see that it
It jumps.
it jumps and it
Identify
moves.
crafts and structure, analyze craft and structure.
Maybe that's
No,
not.
you just- you ought to
No,
put
I know what
this
you're saying,
cluster
I get what you're
together.
saying, so
And
it
the
start,
thing
it
is-
resides in comprehension until it
Hits a certain
doesn't
point.
anymore, and then it moves down to craft and structure. I see what you're saying.
Well, think about working with kids reading a text, whether it's 7th grade or 11th grade. What happens is those are interactive. You ask students, what's the tone? And they sit there for a while, and somebody eventually will come up with an accurate
Right.
explanation, and then you say, how did you figure that out? And they'll point to a word choice or a specific
Right.
sentence structure. So they're doing it simultaneously. I don't understand this argument. I mean, it seems to me that you don't do one and then you do the other. They work together.
Right.
So, and in fact, what we have on the literary one, the parallel one in literature, is identify and analyze tone, word choice, syntax. So we have it under craft, but we have identify and analyze, cause we do them
go back to my question.
Yeah.
Should I add analyze to, what are we talking about? Determine authors, what are we talking about?
I know.
Determine and
Where's the
analyze.
punches?
Are we just trying to figure out
Determine and
Kind of.
or
where it lives?
Yes, where it should reside,
Its home.
yes.
Where does it reside?
Where does it belong?
I like to put recognize tone in the comprehend, because I think if you don't recognize the tone, you don't get it. You don't get the, whether it's Jon Stewart or it's Will, whatever that guy is in terms of that.
Well,
You know what I'm saying, no, yeah.
you might wanna use the same verb identify as in
Mhm.
here, as opposed to recognize.
If it's any comfort, I can even remember, and there's a lot of stuff I can't remember anymore because of my age. But I remember when we went through this before, in the old days, it was Daniel's tone was that we just went around.
Tone's hard.
In circles.
And the reason you do go round and round is because it is hard. It's hard for students to get it, and it relies so much on word choice, which is so much a craft move.
Mhm.
And then it,
It is.
yeah, but you have to.
There can be other things too that project tone, like the placement of something at a critical.
I think the closer you get those to the literary text information, the better, it's gonna be easier for teachers.
Right, mirror.
Yeah, I really do. I think the closer you get them to these, it's gonna be easier for teachers.
Well, sure, but it doesn't, it goes back to approaching them similarly, but not.
Right, they don't have to be identical,
The
but
same.
just the same verbs and, instead of separating one here and one there, putting this here.
Okay, so we're trying to figure
Well,
out.
I don't know what to do next.
We're trying to figure out what to do about point of view and bias, right? Like, where should it live? Does it live in the comprehension realm, or does it live in the craft and structure realm? It really is more crafty,
Are we-
less structury.
Are we forcing these clusters?
I kind of feel like.
I mean, do we need, I mean, we go a step further, do we need clusters?
I know what you're saying, because in the beginning, when we came up with those, we said, let's just start here.
Yeah.
And as we work through it, we may find that those
Yep.
aren't working for what we come up with. And I think maybe we're at that point now where we need to look at that and say, that's not necessarily fitting with what we wanna do.
Well, I think they're working for everything till you get to tone, which happened, like I said, 25 years ago. I mean, just because you can't figure out where you wanna put one of those, and I understand
Yeah.
what Jen is saying, that it got put here
Right.
in cluster 2 in the literary text. But we could debate that as well, and say that it should go to one, so
I mean, that's,
yeah.
I think that's been an argument since the beginning
It
of
has.
anybody in any state
Right.
that has written standards will have had the same conversation over where to put it.
Well, and I think the end, what we have to think about is, in the end, what are we going to be doing with it? So, because one of the things we talked about, and I think Nick might have brought this up, is that we have to identify before we can analyze, before we can evaluate.
Right.
But if we want to get to that evaluate piece with whatever it is that we're talking about up here, we aren't gonna write it into the identify and into the analyze section of what we've got, because then all of a sudden now we have a bazillion, and that progression should help us, right? It should take us through that identify to so then I think what we need to be thinking about, because we're not talking about grade level specific yet, we're talking about big picture items,
Right.
is think about, okay, where, at the end, what do we want them to do with that tone, or with
Well,
bias? At the end.
Recognizing or identifying, and I'm perfectly fine with identifying. Identifying tone would come under comprehending and interpreting text. Analyzing it
Mhm.
then takes you to the specifics in the text that caused you to infer that that's the tone.
And
I
we-
give it that
And do we want them to analyze the tone? Like, is that what we want?
Well, in some cases, but I mean, I think kind of like Casey said, if you're reading certain texts in 7th grade, I think just being able to
Right, I'm talking
recognize
about-
what it is or identify it.
And what
At
I'm
the
saying-
end, like the big overall piece, like eventually, when we get through all this and they've learned everything they can learn, are we
Well,
looking
we
at
might want
what they
ninth
do right?
graders to be able to analyze it, but we don't care so much as 7th graders.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying, organizationally, I don't
Yeah.
want those to be two separate standards, and if the clusters are what
That's
are
true.
causing us to put them into two separate standards, then I think the clusters need to change, because.
I think they need to flow.
Okay. If you have two verbs in a sentence,
Right.
Uh-huh.
usually, if you have two verbs in a
Exactly.
sentence, usually you go with your higher verb of the placement. Usually.
Right.
Because it builds. So if you have identify and analyze, you would usually place that standard or that whatever you have in the highest of those two choices. It's more than just comprehend. So if you have identify and analyze, it would go under the cluster two. That's the way it usually is. When you assign DOK or
Right.
Bloom's taxonomy or
Yeah,
anything,
okay.
you go under the highest. So rather than separating it out, it'd be easier to put it together, and then the teacher can benchmark it. If their students are not able to analyze it, they can have them identify it first, and we're gonna break it out anyway on grade levels.
Like I always think of as a middle school level, when you're talking about verbs, identify, explain, demonstrate, and then as you go up higher into the different grade levels, then you start to see more of your analyze. I mean, I know, and again, I guess it goes back to what I teach, that's exactly where it is. If you get into 8th grade and then you start doing more of your analyzing and using those words more.
So
I
why,
agree.
yeah, I like what you're saying, and I don't know who suggested it earlier, but I don't know that there's anything wrong with shifting it at 9th grade or 10th grade or wherever we want to, but putting recognized tone in comprehension today. And then when we go to progression, identifying that it's not just recognizing it anymore, you need to be able to do something with it.
You need to be able to explain analyze.
Yeah.
And the reason I will keep voting to have that cluster two, I mean, I'm looking at the students who are taking the ACT test and the AP test, and if we don't have that as a cluster with a bunch of stuff in it, they are messed over bad. Now, I realize I'm looking at it from that angle of the older students, but if we're talking about college career readiness and where they're going, where we want them to be when they graduate high school, we have to have that as a cluster, it seems to me. For both the literature and
Right. But I'm just afraid this fork in the road. I mean, again, you could look under the literary text ones, right? We have, or you could make every one of those an identify standard again. Identify the overall structure, identify the narrative point of view, identify tone, identify word choice, identify plot, identify setting, identify characters. Every single
up to
thing
comprehension.
you're looking at in craft has an identification and comprehension level piece, and we cannot
We're just
separate
changing
all
the
of
verbs.
those.
Right.
So what
So
do
you
you,
gotta
so
identify
what do you
and
want us to do?
analyze.
You
Yeah.
just want tone to go under craft and structure?
What I wanna do is have a single standard about tone, and at the 6th grade level, it may be identify, and at the 12th grade level, it may be significant analysis, right? But I don't wanna see tone show up 18 different places in the
I don't know
standard
that anybody's
document.
arguing that it should.
No, well, so, but what I think we're arguing about, right, is that determined tone should be in cluster
Comprehend.
1, but analyzed tone should be in cluster 2. No? Is that not what we're arguing about here? And tone, I'm saying, is just one of a dozen different concepts that same problem's going to
Yeah.
exist for.
I think we're talking about where it lives.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and I'm saying that argument is gonna be for
Right.
every single thing. You're going to have a
I-
comprehension and literal level, and you're going to have a analysis level.
Is everybody looking at the how the last group was organized? Does everybody have access to that?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, if you will notice in that cluster two, that first one says identify and analyze how the overall structure contributes to the meaning of the text. Alright? The highest goal there is to analyze. That's why you moved it down to craft and structure. That doesn't mean that you can't ask your student to identify tone. When you get into 6th grade, it might just be identify. When you get up into 7th grade, it might be identify and attempt to analyze, etc. So I guess we're just trying to figure out where does it live right now, cluster 1 or cluster 2?
It's not that deep to me.
No, put it in cluster two.
Sure.
Alright,
Move on.
Or you,
and then we can flush.
And we can change it later, like we said, this is just draft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
when we get down to grade 6, if we wanna say identify, they can identify.
Can I ask a question? So just curious, like, as a teacher, like when you say analyze, identify, and you have these like clusters or standards, I mean, how do you interpret that into your daily, I mean, are those singular words, do they mean like a much bigger picture for you as teachers? Does that make sense, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, does that like guide your total instruction?
You have to unwrap those
Total
standards.
instruction.
Well, I mean, like, do you say, okay, today, like, you look at your standards, you know, and then to your lesson plan comes to those singular words? I'm just curious.
It's the level of rigor associated
Right,
with it.
it's how
So you
challenging
decide.
it is.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Well,
it's
like,
dependent.
identify would mean like you literally just point out, like, here's a metaphor. Analyze would be like,
Like level
how
one
does
to
this
the other.
metaphor work? Evaluate, is the metaphor effective or not? So
So
the
you
verb
know where
does
to
sort of
take your
change
lesson
how deeply.
based on just the
I would
singular
never
word.
ask a question at the beginning of one of my reading units, synthesize this morning.
Right.
Right.
Because they don't have the background information yet to know, yeah, they know what synthesizing means now, but they don't have the information to form their own opinion and then tell me about it
Sure.
until we get through the end.
That backward design.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
know that everything I'm working towards, they all know now that at the end, they're gonna have to do some synthesizing.
I guess my question, just again, being like
Yes.
a parent and just not understanding
always
like
going,
how
"Remember."
significant like the word choice is, I think is very interesting to be honest, because it really gives you your path. I mean, like what we're trying to do for teachers is not make it too cumbersome.
Right.
You know, but at the same time, be specific enough that they know what to do. So I think it's just for me, just a point of clarification, thank you.
It's just taking it to that next level of
Right.
their understanding and our expectations of what we want them to be able to do.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And I think, I'm looking at this and I'm not trying to throw anything crazy out there either, but I'm just having a hard time trying to see how all, like, when I look at the strands and I see literary and nonfiction, to me it's almost, maybe this is too much more, I don't know, stuff going into it, and maybe that's kind of where.
If we go back to the strands here and we start numbering again, if we go back up to this board and let's try to number, let's go to cluster 2, and let's try to number, and let's see if it's not too overwhelming for us.
Okay.
Let's see if we can muddle through this, and if we can't muddle through it, then we know we have a problem.
So what did we decide with tone? Is it a 1 or 2? A 2?
Okay,
2.
number 2, do you have anything that says identify or analyze overall structure?
Yes.
Anything that deals with the structure?
It's in
Text
the middle.
structure.
Yeah, right in the middle.
Middle, dead middle.
All right, call
Connect
it.
structure,
There it is.
rhetorical
All right,
devices.
that's a 2A. All right, do you have anything that has identify point of view or identify and analyze point of view?
That's the bias argument, right, yeah.
Yep, we put it in 1.
That's a 2B.
And we've got it at
We're gonna
one.
put it in both places, but
All right, identify, all right.
Uh-oh.
Do you have anything that says identify and analyze tone, word choice, or syntax?
We already put that in
It's
two.
2.
All right, we're missing word choice and syntax. Do we need word choice and syntax?
Yeah, we have it here somewhere.
We do.
I think I've said it a couple times, I don't think it's ever made a board, but it's implied with tone.
I don't know.
I think we
No, I
don't.
think we should add word choice and syntax.
All right, so,
As
To
separate from
recognize
tone?
tone?
No.
I mean, tone is established through word choice and syntax, right?
So just adding it to tone.
Yeah.
can you just add it to tone right here?
Yeah, so it's
Identify,
the same
analyze,
format as this.
tone, word choice, and syntax. All right, and that would be a 2C. Do you have anything, okay, this says, I analyze the interaction of plot, setting, and character. Do you have anything comparable to that, in informational or non?
Yeah.
Sort of, yeah,
Yeah, the reasonings.
but sort of.
Interaction of plot, setting, or character, what would be comparable to that? All
I don't wanna
right.
disrupt the flow.
Uh-huh.
No, that's one thing that makes informational different from
Right.
literary.
All right.
And I would say,
This one could go, the one you got your hand on would be
Oh,
in
yeah,
two.
that's definitely in
although that's gonna.
That's
the
pure
next-
two.
yeah.
Okay,
2E.
that's 2E. And A, B, C, D, I'm sorry.
Or
Yeah, but that's-
you also need analyze how the cultural
Oh,
context.
okay, I'm sorry, 2E.
Or was that more 3?
But the last one, analyze how the author's
Author's
idea of
idea.
plan is developed, is a two. That's like
Yes.
structure.
Where,
The very last one would be a two. That
This?
one. Mhm.
this one?
Oh, that's a 2E. That, the one you just put a 2 on?
Okay, we could, yeah, and I think we're
And
missing
A,
a
B,
D,
C,
so let's
D,
maybe just
okay.
put some 2s and then we'll see what happens.
Mhm.
All right.
We know that synthesize is a 3, right?
Mhm.
Right.
Compare and contrast is a three.
That'll be a 3.
And cultural context is a three. Those are
So
all
the
threes.
synthesize is a 3.
3A, 3B, 3BC actually, and then 3B. Yeah.
Okay, what's left?
We just did.
Evaluate evidence for credibility and reliability.
Yeah.
And
The evidence and the reasoning.
Those would be 2s,
Those are
right?
2s.
Analyze
I think they
the
have to
craft
be
and
2s.
structure.
They are.
Cause that's what we were saying was 2.
See, when you get
Yeah.
them, when you get them numbered, it's not too overwhelming. It's not, it's, because they all fit. Yeah.
So did we say this was going to be 2D?
Yeah, but once we start typing, you might
What's
see
that?
that you can combine some of them.
I feel like the 2 over analyze how an author's idea or claim is developed kind of relates to, I mean, not that I'm saying we should merge them, we're just saying like that one and the evaluating the reasoning and the evaluating the evidence, to me, those 3 do sort of go together and they sort of fit in the place where when you're looking at literary text, you're looking at plot, character, setting, you're looking at a nonfiction text, you're looking at concepts, ideas, reasoning, like, I don't know.
So are you saying we should all put it together, roll it in one?
Not necessarily, I think those 3 go together compared to
Yes.
like, structure seems different, word choice, tone,
They
like.
do,
those-
I agree, they all go under number two, but they're all distinct.
Yeah,
Yes.
because this, I mean, I can,
What I'm saying is, even within 2,
Right.
like, those 3 particular standards, like, seem like they really fit in, like, you, together.
but
Right?
isn't
Makes
it
sense?
great?
Right.
I mean, this is really fantastic, and if all teachers could see that they all fit together,
Yeah.
then it's, you're like,
Puzzle.
wow. That moment happens where you're like,
Yeah.
oh, right.
So after we
It's
type
not
it,
a
you can
laundry
see.
list.
I guess what maybe I'm suggesting is, do those 3 form a separate cluster unique to nonfiction? I mean, yes, it's craft and structure, but
Like
is
an
it something
argument
else
cluster?
that goes together? Yeah, like argumentation, I mean, that was, I don't know.
Well, but this,
Or-
this could work in a purely
That's true.
explanatory text too.
That's true.
And this, if you're just going to work with an author's idea.
Sure.
Definitely the last one is under structure, that's pretty much what it
Okay.
is, how it's developed in the course of the text.
Well, this determine a claim and analyze how the claim is developed, those go to kind of that identify and analyze, right? That last one over there and that determine the claim,
This?
yes, that one, and now analyze how the author's idea or claim is developed. Isn't that identify a claim and analyze how it's developed? I,
The wording that
Well,
you've
and
done on
that
two,
gets us
yes.
right back to tone.
So-
I mean, it's the same thing.
Yes.
It's the same.
Cause
Yes.
Casey's kids they need to be able to identify a claim
right,
before they
it's the same thing, right.
understand how it's developed.
Okay.
Shoot, my sophomores though, they struggle with this
Right.
a lot,
Oh, yeah.
and adults too.
College students struggle with that.
The fewer standards we have together.
Yes.
Really.
My future teachers should all be
You
sitting
put
in
them
on
together,
this.
Yes.
This
it's
would
about-
really help them.
It's
It
so
really would.
easy to
Or it
teach.
would frustrate them and they
Right.
would go into another profession.
But I'll be in pre-med by Friday.
Hey, you thought you were bad before, you ought to see the ones we have now.
Get ready.
They would see how they go together.
So what is our question?
No, I think,
How are they?
I think we move forward.
Just lay
Okay.
down.
Yeah.
We got them all identified?
Yeah.
Okay, I have an announcement, slash question. Senator Emery has contacted, this department, indicating that there are complaints about the room, space, the temperature, et cetera, and that he has cleared a conference room in the Capitol for us for the remainder of today and tomorrow if we decide, we would want to take advantage of that space. So I need to know now, because I need to go out and tell them so they can, report, he's waiting for an answer from us.
How about
Now.
tomorrow, not
yeah.
today?
I was
Well-
gonna say, it's almost 2:30.
Yeah,
It's gonna be an hour to Zoom.
Okay, so you want to move from, we also have December 1st and 2nd
Right.
reserved here, so we wanna,
That's a good point.
the other thing is, we're not really sure how that works with the sunshine law, I guess that's okay, I'm not sure, we posted that we were gonna move here, so that's one other issue, but I'm not sure how that works, and I guess that's not really.
24 hour.
My problem. Right, but it's definitely less than 24 hours. Yeah.
I think we don't have an observer space.
I just, the message I got was that Senator Emery contacted this, whatever, office with complaints about the space and the temperature.
This office.
Desi,
Which one is it doing the conference?
I have no idea.
Where is the new one?
I have no idea. They just said that there was a room that was,
It may not be in this, that building's cold over there.
I would think because of the sunshine law, you couldn't move comfortable.
yeah, I'm not sure, I asked about that, but that was, they said, well,
Because
he's
the
waiting for an
notice-
answer, so
it's
just go in
posted-
there and ask.
It's already
So I'm
posted
in here
here,
asking.
and before you decide to make that move for December, I would look at the room, because if it's a hearing room, there are no tables.
Yeah, we'd like to have tables.
You know, I'm trying to think of a room that would have tables.
Right, if it's a conference room, it probably won't.
Now, what were the
It's a
complaints?
conference room.
About space and temperature.
In December, the temperature won't be what I
That's
know,
what I
yeah,
said.
so that's not even an
I-
issue, yeah.
Well, I just need to know what you would like to do, about tomorrow specifically.
I'm fine.
I'm good here, yeah, we know where this is,
I'm just fine with that, but I would.
take off your sweater if you're hot.
Go
Put
with
on your
that,
sweater.
It's always-
It's not. Yeah.
The parking is an issue, I think, over at the Capitol, isn't it?
You would have to call
I'm not sure,
Madison and walk.
I don't know.
It just makes a longer walk from the parking garage, yeah.
I think
Okay,
this is good.
I just need I guess I don't really wanna take a vote, please don't make me do that,
Okay.
just give me a consensus.
Sounds good. We're good.
So, I'm hearing stay.
Yeah.
Thank you, but stay.
Thank you, but no.
Dress in layers.
Trust in layers. We will, give our own advice to ourselves. Okay.
Knights of the
Thank you,
Red
sorry for the
Cross.
interruption, I wanted to try to wait till we got to a
Sure.
stopping
Would
point
it
there, so.
be, go ahead, I mean,
Okay.
what do you do? Would it be appropriate, I mean, I think writing is next on our list, I think we probably need writing, but maybe that would also be a good time to think about what you want for writing, if you wanna do this process in for writing. I don't wanna speak for the group, but I also wanna keep us moving. This week, we're gonna
Recommend the
have a
literary
couple hours left.
nonfiction, is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, we've done this now for reading literary text, we've done it for reading nonfiction text. I mean, I guess I jumped to writing, we could do speaking and listening next, if people would rather do that one next.
So I think we were talking about writing earlier this morning, so we should probably do writing, right? Weren't we? Weren't we talking about writing earlier
At
this
the very
morning?
beginning, we were talking about language,
Yeah.
well, we broke language off.
So while we have those thoughts on our mind,
So we're finished with this, we're gonna move to writing, is that what you're saying, or you're trying to
That's what
decide?
I threw out as an idea, yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't know if you had gotten there or not.
We're speaking, I don't really care which one we hit next.
yeah.
We did that
Yeah, we did that last
Literary
time.
text.
I mean, just with our brainstorming around it, we have
Yeah,
so much more work to
plenty
do
of
with
work
it,
to
right,
do.
but yeah,
Basic.
yeah, with our basic
Somebody pick the point.
overall, so I don't know, I feel like because we've done reading, I feel like writing is the next logical step. Is there any disagreement on that?
Do we wanna take just a
So, let's-
working break
yeah, let's
slash
take a-
time to think about what you want
let's
for
take
writing?
a few minutes, let's say, how about, is 10 enough? Cause then I'll take this down and put up new. And then, while you're breaking to do what you need to do, think about what would I like to see under writing, and then we'll do this kind of barf draft again, kind of thing, yeah. Okay.
I think we were talking about, Yes.
So what do you have to do tomorrow? You're on the,
Well, Hill and
Oh, yeah.
Across the street from Madison.
And across the street, from that governor's building.
Yeah.
It's right across the
There I
street.
am.
City parking garage.
you
it's
texting
all private.
That's, I was looking.
No, I was just, she said, I'm good, everybody's behind each other, so we should, I'm pretty sure.
What do you have to do?
No, don't be sorry, I already understood.
Well, it would just be
It's $6 a day for.
Days of meetings.
Months.
Yeah.
Revisiting
Yep, so I get it.
Then we should be ready.
It's not even, it is getting bad at that too.
I was kind of over there, and it was.
That's gonna help to
More chocolate is needed.
Oh, in here?
Always. Always helps.
Yeah, it's good. I think that's having the fan going is how.
Yeah, this kind of works.
I know, really
It's
not.
exhausting.
It's really interesting though, and I wish I would have never read this about 25 years ago. I mean, really, I just feel like I have absorbed so much from all this.
I did do it 25 years ago, coming back and doing it again, it's good, but it also is just like.
Is it different or?
Well, it's a different context, of course. It's a really smaller group for the ELA part, which is, I did it before, but it was a much larger group for the process standards. It was like 24 students. And that was frustrating.
I just wish that all teachers could do this.
I know. It's really good PD. Unfortunately, what they usually do is pick one.
On the last end of the, on the last leg of the page.
I kind of was too.
Looking at the revisions.
I think that's what I remember is doing some work and feeling like our work got nullified.
When you sent them out, and people gave suggestions.
Okay, so you're doing it, okay.
We did the work and then.
And if tomorrow
I remember being at Tantera where the work
See what
was
I'm saying?
done. At Tantera, or when we were there at that Arrowhead Resort, over by the dam, you know where I mean?
Yes.
Yes, he used to work there sometimes. It might have been at Arrowhead Lodge.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one, it was. a
Was it
long
the
time ago.
standards?
It was it was the placement, the show me standards, yeah, that time, it was.
Well, there were several phases. They started developing those
Yeah.
in '96.
But I was in the.
And they weren't finalized till '99.
Yes, and like,
Mine was, I was in 1890.
yeah. Do I need to go, I go back some.
Or for December, okay. Just whatever.
Tomorrow, if you want,
Okay.
and then we'll do it for December. If you have anything you want for tomorrow, and if you don't, then, I mean, we'll have one for December too, Carrie.
There is others, so that's fun. I can put really interesting things on it.
That might be kind of fun. Would you bring it? Okay, I need to capture it later tonight.
Oh, yeah.
I just, it got to be so
We can
hectic.
maybe
That's fine, I'll do it in a little bit. It just got to be so hectic that I just didn't, but I will.
Well, it's not really worth it.
I want, I want to take a picture and I want to get them noted on it.
Did you get them?
I know, I ran out of ink last night, cause my daughter had a report, and she stepped on
Is it possible to print out this, breakdown of our literary standards that we have?
your Google Docs.
Yeah, I didn't print it. I meant to print it and copy it, and I didn't have time on
My
Friday
eighth grader
before I left.
Are you wanting
memory
like
book
one
pages.
copy of it?
Printing it all last night and had no more ink.
I'd like a copy to
How many people don't have digital?
I
don't-
have it, but.
They don't have a budget for printing anymore, for copying anymore.
Does anyone have a hard copy of it?
No, I'm sorry, again, I really meant to
I
bring
mean,
one, but I
my
didn't.
guess would be that I could get them to maybe make 3 copies of it, Carrie, depending on how long it is.
I can give it to you.
It's okay.
That's fine, I can see
Yeah,
that.
it's a page.
Is it a Google Doc?
Yeah.
Can you share it with me or email it to me, copy and put it in, however you wanna share it with me, and I'll get it done?
Just remember meeting at 4 to get the volleyball game.
Thank you for saying all of that.
Stacy have to go?
We have like.
That's what my daughter's
Yeah,
I was gonna start, you wanna start that way?
And they're, so I'm gonna board
Okay, so Kim brought this lovely, Kim's friend brought this lovely mix of
Wowzer.
scrumptiousness. Looks really delicious, so if you want a cup, there's a cup, if you pass those, and then if you want a napkin, there's a napkin, or if you want both, there's both, so. Tori, what's your email?
Grable T,
E-L-R-O.
L-E,
I should do
the
that.
middle letter T at Smithville. .k2.
Troy. Do you know
S-M-I-T-H-V-I-L-L-E. S-M-I-T-H-V-I-L-L-E.
Yeah, he has been wonderful for our social studies department.
Really?
I really, really like him.
Did
he come from you?
He is my daughter's uncle.
Okay. Well, we got another young man who went to school with him, to high school and such together.
Really, who's that?
Is it Banneker?
Benica?
Yes,
Eric
yes.
Benica.
They are both teaching
Oh,
middle
really?
school, and they have been a breath of fresh air
Awesome.
that department needed. They were a little bit stuck in some old ways, and they have been very good. And they're really a good fit for middle school.
Simo's a great kid, that makes me happy to hear.
I met him this summer.
Okay.
Benica?
Oh, two N's, okay,
Yeah.
cause there's a Berkshire piece. The
Benica.
student taught, okay, it's different lessons.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a
Student
good
taught
kid.
last year.
I met him this summer for, when we had professional development over the summer, I really, really liked him.
His sister was in my class a few years ago, and I'd say a few years ago, it was more like 8.
Almonds in there.
But she is an incredible elementary teacher, I'm not sure where, but just, you know, you can tell by the things people say on Facebook and the pictures they post, I just wish my babies would be in her class.
He's really good for middle school, I mean, I think it's a perfect.
That makes me
fit.
happy to hear.
And we need good young men at middle school, and those boys are in their formative ages.
Yeah, good, that makes me very happy. I will have to tell him next week. When I talked to him a few weeks ago, he was very encouraged and
Yeah,
really enjoying his job a lot.
I really like him.
Is it good? Oh, I'm glad. I was watching it and thinking, oh, it disappeared when I came back.
Coming around.
I was getting a little
I was
worried.
watching it.
It's like I'm at a Halloween party, if I close my eyes, I can pretend for half a second. I had some naughty cider or something to go with that.
You can go to that karaoke thing. Do that one.
That was an adventure, man. I would go back. It was a good time. That's an issue. She is, yeah. Yeah, well, I missed the home game last time I was here, but if this happened to be her last game, they lost tonight, I think, so.
Very tough to set up, but.
Oh, no, yeah, you don't wanna.
Did you send me something, Carrie?
I shared it.
Okay.
I think.
That's fine, I'm gonna look. Reading more.
I'm at Portage. She's an independent. And my daughter's an independent.
Okay.
So Karen, is Newton, is it at all close to Marionville?
They're, well, not close, but out of Springfield. They're in our like FCCLA, they're in our region. They're the edge of the region up there before it then changes over to the Republic and Springfield schools. Yeah, Region 10. We're 11.
The Blue Springs Teacher of the Year this year, who is a really good English teacher, taught at Marionville. she began her career. She did. And she still hears from her students, and she's been there now. Over 10 years. No, her husband, she's from Blue Springs. She was my student 3 years in a row.
Oh, awesome. Who is it?
In English.
Teacher
Ashley
here.
Bertrand.
Huh.
She's a teacher here.
That's
She's
awesome.
only 34. She's out, she's very good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
back in.
her husband had a job there for a while. And then came back home to see what she was back.
Is Sarah Cron still in Blue Springs?
Oh, yeah.
I wish I missed her by 1 year in Independence.
Very different by you. Would you like some?
It's delicious.
I would love a little, yes.
She teaches
because
college all day. I mean, I don't know if she.
But in need, I missed.
Yeah.
lunch
Yeah, you
coming here
yeah,
from
you
the
deserve it,
evening.
right?
So
Two AP and one AP. Not anymore napkins.
I will
I wonder
seal
if that's
mix.
She has Lang Inlet.
I would probably use that. One of those papers.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
I like the idea of sealing mix.
Every day.
Does she have any children?
Brady.
Maybe she has some children. Who's that?
Yeah, she has no children.
There you go.
She has no children.
How many students are in
Because
high
when you
school?
have children, they have to.
Yeah.
Step back and open this, I'm afraid it's just a plan.
No, you have to all, you know, but.
You have different priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even.
Okay, it's been 10 minutes. Are you ready?
Well, that's a big key. And the grading is just so worth it.
Hey, Lindsay, where is her English teacher?
So much more time.
I feel like this one should be okay. It's really a little like
It is
reading, just north of Blue Springs. Yeah.
So I had you.
So it shouldn't feel too far.
I was thinking like. No, it's a suburb of Kansas.
Oh, that's weird. She's from Brady.
She's on that phone.
Okay, she is, all right. And I was trying to remember if I saw her.
Yep.
No, she's been, yeah, she's been lots and lots, but I saw her there. Okay, you ready to tackle writing?
Do it.
Yeah. All right, someone suggest a color. Yours doesn't have to be pink.
Suggest what?
A color.
Purple.
What do you have?
Royal blue.
And that is what I
Royal
got.
blue, that's a good one. Do we have any royal blue?
Well, I do, it's pretty thin. So as long as you're not looking at that, that's okay.
Okay, you better use another one.
Yeah, I don't have a big, fat one anymore. What do I got? You want someone?
Told me out my car.
Let's stick it
I'll
with
get my whole
purple
bag.
or red.
Do you have orange?
No, I
Here's a
don't.
chart marker.
Let's use an orange chart.
That's a little too Denver Broncos.
Oh, yeah.
Orange, we have no orange, this is great, okay. You ready?
Oh,
Well.
Chiefs, we're Raiders.
Raiders.
I could have liked you all the way up until that minute.
Black,
I kill people in books. I'm always
Silver,
looking for
black.
good names.
Okay, ready? Here we go.
Writing.
Writing.
Yay.
Start me off.
Under clusters.
Just whatever you wanna see under here.
We're gonna just do standards, not gonna just,
Yeah.
topics we wanna
Just
cover.
topics, just like we did last time, and, last time we fit them under those previous clusters. This time we'll be developing our own new ones, it would be my guess, so.
Writing process,
Yes.
drafting and revision.
All together?
I was
Well,
just
just
gonna,
process,
yeah,
writing process, and then you put the different parts.
to figure out how to address it.
You said
Writing?
less is more, so
Right.
we don't wanna have.
That's okay, I was
standard
just
for-
trying to figure out what you said
Yeah,
two things.
writing process.
Okay, writing process,
Parts of speech.
parts of speech. Okay,
Conventions, writing conventions.
Are these gonna double up in writing and language? Genre?
I don't know, we talked about that
Let
the other
you-
day.
let you take it where it goes here.
Organization.
So,
Organization.
Including intros, conclusion, sequencing.
Oh, no, I went constructive next
Oh,
level.
I know, I hate that when that happens. See, I always have to glue a piece of white paper over it, because
Yeah.
it would bother me to switch up. My
Are you
kids
gonna be
like, "What are
okay?
you doing?" I'll be okay,
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Okay.
That could be the Raider fan in
It
me.
could be.
I'm used to fixing mistakes.
I know some people like that.
Though.
Sorry.
Oh, this is gonna be fun.
The Royals came home around the Raiders.
Okay, just since we're already disrupted, when do the Royals start playing?
Tomorrow.
night, 7 o'clock.
You have on the right.
I really need a sporting event on tonight,
But anybody driving into
There
Kansas
isn't one.
City is probably gonna get.
There's football.
I'm going to the Chiefs.
I just
football
needed,
game.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail us, I
What
just
about
really need a sporting
genre?
event, my Blues aren't playing, my Cardinals are done, I was hoping for some Royals, but no.
Hey, man,
Okay.
Antonio Brown, my fantasy football team. You can vote for him.
Writing analyses and writing arguments.
Yes, types, yeah.
2 bullets, or just
Two
one is
bullets.
types, or,
Separate.
okay,
Separate.
okay. I forgot it's Monday Night Football. I'm good. Okay, writing,
Analyses. Writing arguments. Writing narratives. Just had an interesting experience. Yeah.
Cause I need.
I'm grading the
some
writing
narrative.
for
Like
the
that
dual
genre,
credit,
but
the
do we
dual
do
credit
genre?
class.
Will genre end up being something?
So we mentioned writing,
what did you tell me?
expository.
Narratives?
Writing.
Narratives, I think we need writing.
Yeah, narratives.
Like personal writing, reflection, and journal entry.
Writing informational text.
Which could be genre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Informational.
Writing in, you know, what word do we want to use for that?
Writing for fun? No?
And it could be a
There's
narrative.
some-
It could be
I would
narrative.
put creative writing under
Creative
narrative.
writing,
It could
yeah.
be a make-believe
How about
narrative.
research-based writing or synthesis? Synthesis, research-based writing.
Okay, that's fine, I have no problem with that, I would just say, I would be putting
It
mine
goes under all of
Yeah,
them.
I
under
would
here
agree.
or under here.
Right, I agree, it goes under them, but what I'm trying to say is, don't you think research skills should be a separate
Okay.
kind of skill?
Let's start
That's what
listing-
I'm trying
yeah,
to say.
let's start listing some of those out there.
Yeah.
So-
Like, the ability to find credible sources to support your writing. I don't know, like what I just said, something like that, right?
Okay, so you wanna pull the research out a
Yeah,
little
so
bit,
something
okay,
with
so,
skills to actually
okay, so
find it.
locate
Yeah.
credible sources, is that what you said?
Credible, relevant sources.
Credible. Sorry, yeah, can you read it?
Yes, it's my fault, but we're gonna,
Take that color.
because I had to put it in.
They don't even have
Google
Google
Docs
Docs
yet, I
yet.
had to put it in a Word
There's an
document.
app for that.
You can read it,
Oh.
it's fine.
Oh, that's not what I wanted. Where, don't talk.
Sorry, I
about it.
distracted you.
No, it was I did that. Credible, reliable sources?
Yeah.
Under our strands where we have writing,
Uh-huh.
would we, I think of research writing and then I think of them as kind of two separate big, huge chunks. So maybe how we have speaking and listening together, writing and research, because research.
Just listing it. and
Yes,
writing.
because
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah,
gonna be
okay.
easier for us later on to
This
chunk it
research is-
out, yes, list all the things we want for them to be able to write with reference to research versus analysis, arguments.
Right, that's why I saw it as a separate one too.
Yeah.
Research-based
I think
writing,
how we
and
have
any of those could be that,
Right, but I think how
Okay.
we did speaking and listening, maybe with
Right.
writing.
Right.
So if I hear you right, you're not saying add research as a separate strand, just
No,
add the
add it
word
to
research.
Add it to
Sorry,
writing.
Writing
that-
and
For
research?
a little clarification
Okay,
that way.
So add research to writing,
Yes.
Writing research.
Is everyone okay with that, or?
like that?
I just think research is such a big chunk.
and it would then become
I know,
a
I
separate
wrote
cluster.
it down here,
Right.
right.
Makes sense.
Yeah, no.
There's a lack of consistency, I'm sorry, it's not parallel, I apologize. As I'm writing, I'm like, oh.
I wasn't gonna mention.
Darn, I'll have to revise.
What's
Here,
not
let me revise that. Let me edit that.
What's not parallel?
Let me edit it. I don't mind doing that.
Now we need a piece of white
Oh,
paper.
I know. I'm just modeling good, revision and edit techniques. Strike through, scribble out really hard. Okay?
Avoid plagiarism when integrating information from white research.
Avoid plagiarism.
Or just, I guess, simplest, just integrate with your research, but.
There's an after
plagiarism, yeah.
Okay, so avoiding plagiarism is something we want, and then we want integrating, right, as something separate?
I don't know that they have to be, but I'm not opposed to separating them either. I mean, when you integrate, you wanna make sure you're not plagiarizing.
Right,
If
but
you
I think
were-
at the same time, you also want it to be like, I think about integration as being flow. So it's not
Yeah.
like,
Oh, that's true.
I
I see
write,
what
write,
you're
write,
saying.
and then I
Yeah,
stop
yeah, yeah.
everything, and here's my source,
Yeah.
quoted. Right, right,
That's
right.
fair, yeah, separated.
Okay, so, avoid plagiarism, and we'll figure out how to make that nicer later.
Gather relevant evidence.
To support a claim.
Oh, it's just not relevant there. Okay.
No,
To do
credible
anything.
and reliable is right, what you've
Okay.
got down there, this is a different.
Okay, so this is integrate, well, sources, or source information?
It's more about.
Well, I'm sorry, hold on,
Okay.
I'm going back. What was it? Integrate information from sources, integrate?
Yes, integrate information
Okay.
from.
Sorry, Maribella.
No, that's okay, I just didn't hear that.
You're too fast for 'em.
Yeah, I'm going. Alright, and then this one was, locate relevant.
Gather relevant information.
Gather relevant.
Or.
Right, that's kind of important.
What about formulating questions?
I like that one a lot.
The guys
Formulating
research.
questions,
Formulating inquiries.
open-ended, researchable.
Yeah.
Formulate questions for
Open- I like your
research.
open-ended.
Open-ended.
Formulate open-ended.
Yeah.
Not just what
Research
is.
questions or inquiries or queries.
Is citation to narrow for now?
No, I think citation has its place in there. I put it on the list. We're doing with your later.
Digital writing?
How about writing for documents like PowerPoints and just collecting data?
Is that a separate one?
No,
Digital composition.
I think
That's what I call it.
That's where it's been in there with
Yeah.
something, digital
get that, Karen?
storytelling, digital.
I heard it, so then I heard you guys kinda
Digital
comment.
composition, like PowerPoint.
Writing
or-
documents that, like PowerPoints and.
So,
Digital
does,
presentations.
like develop or create digital documents,
Compositions.
digital
Digital
compositions?
composition.
So that it kind of encompasses all of those? Okay, so,
Their
We're really
dissertation topic.
using multimedia to.
Yeah,
Enhanced presentations.
yeah, I would say, yeah,
Using multimedia.
multimedia. Because sometimes they have to write, my sister-in-law has at their school, she's principal, they have, a whole, television department.
Yeah.
This was third through fifth grade, is all this in the building.
Well, one-to-one schools,
And
this is all
they
done
have this,
electronically.
a big part of their day is the kids have to write the weather report,
Mhm.
they have to write the script, the producer of the television program has to count out the minutes.
I love that. That's
And so, it is cool, it's very cool.
So, I feel like
I don't
there's
think I'd
almost
limit
two
it to
things.
just PowerPoint.
No, that's what I was saying,
That's why I like digital
composition.
compositions.
But what you're saying is actually almost, I feel like something that's different yet the same. Because one of them, like, it is the text, right? It's the thing that's going out, but sometimes it supports what we're
It's
doing.
the
So sometimes it
correct.
supports the speaking and listening,
Right.
or it supports the writing, but sometimes it is the thing.
Right.
So, like, I think there's
So-
both, and like they need to know how to do each.
To use multimedia to produce and to publish.
I think produce is a key word,
Yes.
producing communications and producing.
I'm thinking our one-to-one schools, their writing is so different because they're doing it on a device.
Right.
And that's what you're teaching, of
Variety.
course, in digital.
That's what my dissertation
Yeah,
is,
so
was.
you, I was gonna say, you
Same is.
can tell them to do this, I could, yeah.
I'm done.
Yay.
How's that?
Yeah.
Produce digital communication and or compositions, so.
Identify audience and purpose for your writing.
Is it identify
Kinda key.
audience and purpose or determine which type of writing to best meet
Nope.
the audience
Or
and
both.
purpose?
I think you need both.
Two different.
Yeah, you need both, yeah. So, so you have to know who your audience and purpose is, right? Or who and what.
But that's distinctive in my mind. I think.
Depending on
Well,
the type
wouldn't
of
you,
writing.
wait a minute, wouldn't your writing show an awareness of audience and purpose?
Go back to the reading today.
I mean,
Identify and then
Ideally.
use it.
But,
Yeah.
but your writing needs to show an awareness of audience and purpose.
Right.
Yes.
That's okay, I'm
Peter
putting
Arlo
both.
would say that comes later though, right?
It does.
Yeah.
And when you first start out, you say, I'm writing a letter to my mother,
Well, and
asking her, telling her what I'd like for Christmas.
Yeah, and I
So-
think think it's using clear and precise language
Right.
tied
Which
to
is
that.
another one, it's a
Yeah.
separate one,
Use
it needs to be
separate.
there. Well, I think
Produce
clarity
for-
of expression is, it should be a separate
Yeah,
one.
I'm thinking about language in terms of, its application to purpose. The
Oh.
difference between me writing an email or a text versus
Formats.
a formal editorial for the Washington Post.
Would that be
Just
described
formal.
appropriate to audience and purpose?
That work okay? I felt like I was hearing what you were saying, but I changed your words.
So,
Okay, then we're talking about language in there.
something
Or words.
Well, yeah, I would say, I
Something about
don't know how to
words.
phrase it, right, but just word choice, effective use of language, effective use of word choice, syntax.
Yeah, this
But that's
says.
based on audience and purpose, isn't it?
Yeah, and I would argue, so is organization, so I mean, I see a cluster where we're gonna put these like writing skills, and then I see that being more
We have
like
some about revision.
Well, we have writing
It was
process.
So that
do we
would
wanna
be,
spell
yeah.
that out? Yeah, I don't know.
So, what were you gonna say? You had some wording for the word?
Well, I was looking through some various standards, and this one says, use clear, precise language appropriate for the purpose and audience. I just know my students really struggle with that. Of knowing that they need to change their language based on to whom they're writing.
It's formal versus informal language.
But I would,
Whether they're writing an argument or whether they're just writing a letter.
or whether they're writing a piece of creative fiction, like I see, I would broaden it a little bit. I would just use effective language for,
So,
and I would spell out like tone, syntax, word choice.
what did you say? Clear and precise?
She
Clear
said
and
use clear
concise?
and concise.
Clear and precise language appropriate for the purpose and audience.
If we're gonna have a language strand,
Not strand, just.
no, I mean over there on the strands,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
all right? In that language strand, are we going to be mentioning,
Just grammar.
Well, we have conventions
Yeah.
here.
Use
Yeah,
precise,
You said word choice. I'm changing it around a little bit.
clear and precise language
Language.
appropriate for purpose and audience.
Okay?
Collaborative learning.
I put way too much space
Yeah,
here,
so much
folks.
attention. Strike the lines.
Or something like that, okay?
Personal narrative.
So I have the narratives.
Something about.
Interviews.
So someone started talking about, like reflections or things like that. Where does all the rest of that stuff live?
I would say there's almost like a
Genre.
or yeah, like a personal writing section where when coming from my elementary background, we used simply have the kids write stories.
Right.
There has to be a place for that creative.
And that's how we package it, that's our
Yeah.
difference between, cause I teach elementary
Right,
and
I've done it,
secondary.
yeah.
I don't know.
And that elementary starts with those personal memoir
Well, yeah,
pieces and then
yeah.
segue.
the
Yeah.
narratives
Did they come
are
under
real
here?
and make-believe? There are two kinds of narratives, real
Uh-huh.
and make-believe, so you can separate that narrative into two
Oh,
parts,
Right.
real and
this-
make-believe.
But I'm thinking about all those other pieces that don't fall into these
Well, not
items
really.
that we've already identified, like those things about
They have
reflection, like
realistic narratives
reflecting on
and
your
then
writing,
make-believe.
or
Make-believe
journaling,
has
or
dialogue in it.
interviews, or things
Which
like
is-
that, you
you
know?
can-
Personal, I don't know how else to.
So I guess
How
you're
about
you're
projecting
creating this
personal
right?
voice?
Yes.
I was gonna suggest that should be
Right.
somewhere.
How about what?
Projecting personal voice.
Yeah,
In other words, your
voice.
writing doesn't sound flat, boring, you can't tell who the speaker is behind it.
Right.
I was.
We have a point of view, and it's a point of view.
For example, Carrie, you know the memory books the 8th graders do, the writing with their own, maybe you know that. So we've spent a lot of time and ink and things on
Sure
this.
you have.
And so there's a lot of personal reflection and personal stories and personal narrative. Where would that fit?
I think that would fit under here.
Make-believe narratives are real
But I think it
narratives.
depends on, I mean, it's a
It's only
sub-genres.
I know.
Are transitions in this somewhere?
All year.
They would come
Probably
under
implied under
writing,
organization, but you
writing,
might wanna break that
cross
out.
and create.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Where does
Could you just put
creative
behind
The
organization?
thing, I guess the thing that we don't wanna do is, we kinda talked about it in the beginning, like way a long time ago, was that when, in the writing standards, currently, there's like these three types, and then when teachers wanna do something like, I want you to do a reflection on what you've read, or I want you to do a journal entry, or I want you to interview someone and take down the interview, like there's pieces in there that feel like they don't fit, and you want them to feel like they have permission to do those kinds of things that lie outside of there's three types of writing. So my thinking is a lot of those should be in service of something else that they're going to do later on, like my reflection on my reading should probably be in service of my analysis that I'm gonna do later on. It, you know, it should
Like
be,
like
but we
writing
don't
to-
always do that.
Like writing to learn, writing to explore.
Well,
writing to
reading
study.
analysis slash
And
reflection.
maybe it doesn't really fit in the standards for
Well,
real,
no,
I'm
I
just saying.
understand what you're saying, and that
That's
is
been
a
a problem
different
for us.
purpose for writing.
Yeah. And it-
Writing to express.
Yeah.
Could you write writing analysis slash, reflection? I mean, would reflective writing go there?
Well, I think it depends on what the purpose of the reflection is, really. So you said it's, you know, about writing to
Would it come
express, so
under
maybe
writing-
that's where we, maybe we
writing
stick
for
it there
per-
for now and figure
yeah.
out, is there a better place to put it later? I just,
Reflective writing, I do think should be a standalone.
I do too.
Because
Yeah.
you're called upon to do that at the university level a lot.
And that's what turns a class into a writing intensive class,
Yes.
that's
Right,
the
and it's
big
not
component.
necessarily, it doesn't necessarily, it's personal. You know, there are no conventions or, you know, it's your personal metacognitive thoughts that are going in there. So reflective writing, what do you guys think?
Reflective writing. And I think interviews can be carried, I still think we need to put.
well, and I
interviews.
was trying to figure out, like, where does that, like, I feel like there's a category that
Well,
just,
of course,
it's
interviews
almost that
go in
catch-all
with
for those other
information.
kinds of writing that don't,
The technical writing aspect as
Writing
far as
formats or-
resumes, business letters.
Right.
Yeah,
those
we-
kind of
it's,
things.
well, and it's the same thing with reading, if we include folklore and myths, you know, where do we
you're
stop?
right, I know.
Genre.
It's the same
But I
thing
feel like
here.
I feel like I can make those fit under reading literary text itself. Some of those other ones, like some of the writing, I feel like sometimes we feel like we lack the permission to engage in those when they're not, like, allowed for in
So
the
then
standards. And maybe it's in
yeah,
the
I understand what
progression,
you're saying.
maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it doesn't really need to be explicitly stated, because maybe if we start explicitly stating something, then we all of a sudden maybe
That's
limit
the problem.
everything else that's not included, so.
We used to
Yeah.
have this generic one of writing for various audiences and purposes,
Yes.
and you could put a lot of stuff in there.
Well, that is true. That is actually true, writing for various
Produce
purposes.
writing.
Writing in various forms
Well,
or.
you've got produced writing for appropriate audience.
And
Right,
purpose.
but I'm just saying, as a distinct one, we used to have
Let's
writing.
just add it for now and see
Yeah,
what it takes
and
us.
then the cross through, and I don't
And then in
care, but I'm
the
saying that then includes all
glossary,
those things,
yeah.
because, again, a news story versus an editorial versus an interview story or a feature, I don't know. That could go on eternally.
I would really like to see a standard on integrating quotes, paraphrase,
Yeah, I agree.
Is that-
using summary.
That
I'm
not
not
do it?
sure how to.
Integrate information into sources and.
Yeah,
No,
maybe
'cause that's what I was
just
thinking, actually, that's what I was,
But paraphrasing's a very different.
Yeah, we need
Yeah.
that
Yeah, it goes with
separately,
plagiarism.
paraphrase
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
summarize.
Students
Yeah.
do not,
Paraphrase and summarize.
they do not quote effectively.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just
well, that was
talk.
my point with that, was like, they write, and then all of a sudden they go, and then there's a
Can
quote
you-
that shows up, and then they keep
Can you
writing,
just
and there's
add-
no link.
Can you add the word effectively to the end of that?
At the
Integrate
front of it.
information from sources effectively?
Well, that would be misplaced, we want to put it at the front.
Effectively.
Sorry, I had to say
Effective
that,
integration.
because we do want to say that though, effectively integrated.
Right, there's no link.
Well, I feel like that's semantics almost, but is that gonna do what you want it to do?
But in the research.
Cause effectively,
we added
to me, I mean, like, I would assume we would mean effectively, we wouldn't mean ineffectively.
But I
No,
think.
You know what I'm saying?
It seems redundant, I
Without-
understand, but
But-
it doesn't get across that idea
Right,
that I think is
that's what
central.
I agree.
Yeah.
Without the word effectively, I think it just means, can I take information and put it in there? It
Right.
doesn't
Right.
imply there's a craft element to it.
You have to link that information and that evidence to the rest of the text being written.
You have to have your warrant.
Mhm.
You don't need to put that word in there, but
Yeah,
that's what you have to
as
do.
soon as you do, right.
We can throw tool in it.
So you want me to put effectively integrate?
Mhm.
left off, okay.
We've sort of talked about it, but not, I mean, I think it still needs to be standalone. Something about like elaboration of detail, which I mean, yes, pulling information from research is a way to do that, but there's also a way to elaborate without. Like if you're if you're writing a personal narrative, like you're wanting to add in
Descriptive
dialogue,
choices.
descriptive
Yes.
language,
Right.
something about elaboration and development. I don't know sure how
Right.
you phrase that, but
Elaboration
of
and
detail,
development.
yeah.
So just add elaboration and detail and we'll take it
That
further
would be
later?
take it from there.
So would the technical writing aspect fall under your informational? Is that what we're thinking?
Well, and I put it here too, I think it falls, depending upon what it is, cause like to me, a resume could be informational,
Right.
you know,
Right.
or it actually could be an argument.
Because couldn't some technical
Right, hire
writing have
me, I'm the best.
And a narrative.
And a narrative, yeah, I'm real, okay.
They all do.
So-
Then you have some technical writing whose purpose is, the purpose of which is primarily informational, but
Right.
there might be
Everything's
alternative.
everything,
I mean, it would be
really.
different.
Everything's everything.
Well,
Do we
maybe
need to
we're-
have one, I know that we talk about, maybe under the writing process, talk about revision, but we also talk about editing,
Yeah, I like
and have those as two separate.
I see what you're saying.
Have revision and editing is separate from the writing process?
Well, that's
No,
part of
well,
the writing process.
or at least to have them defined underneath the writing process.
Maybe just when we write the writing process standard,
Yeah.
we define, we add those
Pre-drafting,
elements.
I did think we definitely wanna include the words revision.
So
Oh,
can we,
for sure.
can we
Yeah.
put some
I
of
think
those
we would
in
all agree.
parentheses
Brains,
maybe
which
behind
you might,
it?
well, yeah, in the writing
Just so
brainstorm, pre-draft,
we-
draft.
You want
Yeah.
to put that all in here?
Revise.
No,
I don't know
I
if
mean,
you
we
want to
all,
put
just,
parentheses. I
et
don't know.
cetera,
I
et
don't
cetera.
But do you like the idea of having a separate standard for revision?
I think it depends on how that would look like in a progression.
I think it's in the writing
It's the writing
process.
process, that's how we.
I mean, you could.
Revision's part of the writing
But-
process.
Right.
I
but
know that
if-
it is.
To Lindsay's point, I think, well, you could easily have a cluster called the writing process and have several standards within that cluster, like
Oh,
each step
right.
of it, or you could
And
just
that
have
would
a
be fine.
single standard that says, use the writing process.
And I think we would need to look at how does revision look in a progression from 6th to 12th grade? Is there enough
Right.
that changes from grade level to grade level that we would pull it out and teach this about revision and then teach this about revision? Or does it not? And, you know, cause it may warrant that, I don't know.
That prompts me to throw out another topic, which I'm not saying should be a standard, cause I don't believe it should, but this is a topic. Writing on demand,
Yeah.
which is very different from writing on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just read something about that actually.
Like the ACT test they're all taking.
Behind organization, in parentheses, could you just list a few things like, sorry, organization is fourth down, transitions, intro, conclusion, I just feel like those words probably need to be
Right.
somewhere, right? They fit there, but I just,
Beginning,
sequence,
ending, sequence.
Yeah, sequence.
like those are all separate skills, I think
Right.
live
Essays.
comfortably in a sentence.
What about
Logical.
structure and features?
Well, logical organization.
Cause I feel like that falls under organization,
Structure,
like how I
yeah, I agree.
choose to structure it,
Text structure.
or what I choose to use as features
Yeah.
is also part of how I.
Well, there's also structure at the sentence level, so, I mean, that's an organizational issue, sentence
Sure.
structure.
That's true, and it's also a language issue, right?
Well, that's what I was doing.
Everything is everything.
Everything,
like-
that's what
How
we
about we
wanna-
just do that? Let's
everything
just
is
do that.
everything.
Standards are done, everything is everything.
But there's just one.
The strands language is going to be about conventions, correct? Is that that's
Yes.
grammar?
And
And
Okay,
also
so
vocabulary,
Yeah.
it's gonna have
Okay.
two parts.
Okay.
That's the conversation we had this morning that you got to miss, like you wanted, about whether it should
I was
all be.
teaching this. I
Right,
was
on
teaching
whether
her
it
writing
should be,
class.
it should be a
Language.
distinct separate
Yeah.
strand, and we had that, I mean, because we had before.
Oh, I agree, I'm just
Yeah.
wondering
And then
how
we
much
had-
we go into
Yeah.
it here, if under language
Okay.
we're.
So, any other
putting in a lot of it.
topics that we're missing?
Would hook be another organization?
Sure.
I know we do.
Yes, yes.
So now.
That's what I was wondering, like content specific, I don't know what courses is that.
So it would almost be different scoring modes, because you need content specific words.
Right.
Then that had mentioned something about citation earlier that we didn't get up there, or no, we
It
did,
says
I'm sorry, I lied,
citation.
sorry.
It's not.
Yeah, I kinda just
Lindsay brought up one that I'm thinking about more now, and she talked about revising, because editing gets done other places, but revising maybe doesn't. When you brought that up, are you talking about just
Well, I think even if you are, it bothers me in the writing process, because if they're doing an on-demand, the writing process doesn't really apply, but they still need to be able to read and revise what they have written before they put it in my pretty hands, so.
Even an email, right?
Right.
Yeah, cause I have to really be
Good.
careful, and
Make
sometimes
better
my text
word
messages,
choices.
cause it auto-corrects
Yeah.
weird words.
Oh, yeah.
And I have to reread my text, so, and revise
And
them.
revision can kind
Writing
of play
is
in with the
recursive.
paraphrasing. and-
Yeah.
That's actually what it is you keep correcting yourself as you,
Right.
whether it's in a short piece or an
Yes.
extended piece.
So really it's revision to enhance understanding, revision to enhance writing.
Or to convey what you're trying to get across, what.
Well, there's so many things
Well,
you
yeah.
get to think about.
Yeah,
You have to
if you
think about
start,
what is
you
my
can
purpose,
revise.
who is reading it, cause a lot of times I do that, like my email is who is reading it, and how will they hear the
Right.
tone of what I'm
For
writing.
revise for
And there's
audio.
your
So I have
voice.
to really think about that,
So you go
yeah.
back to those traits, revision at the deep structure level, which
Right.
is content, organization, voice, and at the surface structure level, which is word choice, sentence structure.
Right, right.
I mean,
That's why I like having a separate, I
Well, I
like,
see what you're saying,
the
and I
separate
see how it
revisions.
Well,
could grow.
that's why I came back to it, because
Yeah.
I think it,
And I see how it could grow,
needs its
actually,
own.
when you
and
talk
then
about
the
it in those terms.
conventions part comes in the language. I mean, I'm just saying it could, not that it's not part of writing.
Revision's just so big,
Yeah.
it's not,
well, and it's something that I have to explicitly teach.
right.
They're
And
not
reteach.
inherently good at
They do
it.
it in 8th and 9th grade, and
No.
they're in college, they forgot
Yeah.
everything.
They like their word choice.
So, should I just put
Oh my
revision
God.
as its
Yeah.
own thing, and then we'll
Yes.
figure out what that really
And
looks
that's
like?
Well,
later?
it goes
tested on
back
the
into the
ACT.
formal, when you all were
It
talking
is
about
tested on
formal,
the ACT,
informal.
exactly, that's on,
Some
that's
of the
ACT
other-
items
Yes.
do that.
Some of the other
Yes.
state standards write it as the student consistently uses a writing process to develop, revise, and evaluate writing.
Oh, yes,
They use,
develop,
they've
revise, and
just
evaluate.
gone through
And there's the evaluate is the
Yeah.
recursive part, where you
Mhm.
go back and you do it again, and, oh wait, I forgot this about my audience, or I forgot this about what I wanted to.
Right, I kinda feel like that's a good way to look at it, because now with electronic composition, there's not a whole lot of brainstorming that goes on, it's on the go drafting. And like I feel like that's kinda, I don't sit down and brainstorm first really anymore at all, which is probably not good, I should probably not say that, especially on tape, but I did. It's usually brainstorming while I'm writing it, right, and then I go back and read through it again, and I kind of evaluate what's happening here.
Well, but that's where the process and the on-demand actually come together, they do.
Yeah.
And most people
Right.
it's in their lives.
Right. Okay, so we got revision.
So we going to break down
On the digital.
argument
I don't know if
later?
we have
That's
enough.
what fit on the digital.
Well,
Meaning what? Meaning like kinds of arguments?
Well, students need to be able to write a claim and a counterclaim.
I think so, because I think it depends on where you are in that progression, what you're doing. Because the sixth graders are not necessarily writing, well, I don't know, I could argue, I know my elementary students are writing counterclaims, depending upon what we're writing.
Right.
and
You
our
know,
eighth
everything
grade
is
had to do
everything. You
both
should
last
just-
year.
I just
Yeah.
wanna make sure
My
that we
sixth graders are working on it, going into
Yeah.
Read and Read 180.
Right, but
Claim and
developmentally, right
counterclaim.
now, because of the fact that, like, that's a brand new idea across the board, that's like, it's like, some kids can, some kids can't, depending upon when it's introduced to them.
Right.
So like, my middle school teachers will be struggling on with it because K-5 has not been talking about it.
Eventually, it'll,
Yeah, it trickles down.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So,
but that's
the
a
things
good
like
point.
analysis, arguments, narrative, and informational, we're going to break those down into certain things that students should be able to do.
that's what I would think, because there's different, sorry, Starburst. There's different things that go under each one.
Right.
You know, your tone is different, your
Certainly.
word choice is different, everything is,
I would think we have.
Okay,
Yeah.
now the two, you two, is technical writing and totally separate? That's the other thing I wanted to
well, that's what I asked, that's what I'm asking. If, I
Okay,
mean, I
well,
don't know if it
you're the
falls under
ones that know.
informational.
Well,
Technical
but
writing to me are
no.
well, that's, you know, that's why I brought it up. I mean, I think
The
technical
menu
part
for
of,
everything.
think
you know,
it's
maybe design a process paper, a business letter, a
Right,
resume,
right.
any of those things. That,
So
I
I
mean, how many
guess-
of you do resumes in your
Yeah,
high
in our
school?
school,
Well,
yeah.
see, and that's moved to
Okay.
my business marketing department.
Yeah,
they're
it's
the
not in
ones.
English, but it's a part of the part.
But it's
Right.
still a part of a
Yeah.
standard that's
Yeah.
that.
Right, and that's what Julie Sherman is doing, her
Right.
whole initiative right on the Missouri Road Project, right, back on
The thing about that then becomes, so if we put technical writing on
Those
there
are
as its
Starbucks
own
machine.
thing, which is
Here.
fine by me, then what does that progression look like? And does that progression break down
Pass the
into,
chocolate.
at this grade level, they're writing resumes, at this grade level, and so then it becomes more prescriptive than we really want it to be, so we have to be careful about that. That's my only issue with saying, let's make it its own thing.
But a technical writing can be reading, you know, a recipe off the box
Right.
of something. I mean, it could be something
No, I'm
as-
with you.
as-
My teachers will wanna know, what are we responsible for?
Right.
So like what, like
Tell me what I
in
need
tenth
to do.
grade, what are we responsible for teaching so that we don't have students writing resumes, sixth grade, seventh grade,
Like a
eighth grade,
process
ninth grade.
paper,
You know what I'm
one
saying?
That
grade.
informational text is very broad. That includes processes, how-tos, steps, recipes.
But my,
So
yeah,
we're
but I
calling
think.
informational
It's
technical.
very broad.
Well,
Maybe that's what we should do, because if you have something
Comparison.
like a request for proposal or something, that's not just information.
Right.
No,
So I
I-
mean,
Even a memo.
informational.
No, but
Well, sometimes it's,
informational,
even just a
like I said,
Right.
even your
It's
resume can be an
technical writing.
argument.
Right.
right.
You're right, persuasive.
Right,
Right,
yeah,
it
right.
really
depends upon
I'm making a
the-
claim I'm the best
It should
candidate for this
be.
position,
But
right?
it
And
really
then here's all my
depends upon the
evidence, so.
purpose.
So I think, but the thing is that, like,
On the
is there,
purpose.
is there terminology?
Right,
Or
if
is
your
there,
purpose is to
are there skills and terminology that are directly related to technical writing that should be taught so that it should be its own item?
Well, and it gets back to the reading debate, right? Like we intentionally chose not to delineate poetry, drama, fiction, pop, and
Yes.
within nonfiction, even the wide variety of different genres and text types there are. Do we now in writing wanna do the opposite and say that there are 8 different types of writing you need to be able to do?
I see what you're saying. I guess my concern as a career tech ed teacher is we're dealing with teachers who are not trained in English. And if you don't have, I'm not sure that they would embrace doing assignments if they weren't clearly defined as to
Right.
what they needed the student to do.
On narrative, for example, real narratives can be written in sequence. So your how-tos and your recipes that list the steps are forms of narrative writing. So most every event, narratives are written in sequence. That's a primary definition of a narrative, is it's written in sequence.
First, next, then,
Yeah,
finally.
always written in sequence. You have two kinds of narratives, real and make believe.
Except when there's
And on those,
flashback.
and on those real
It's
narratives,
just a messy one.
on those,
Messy one.
on those real narratives, the ones that describe the process, the steps, the how you put things together. If you look at the literature, some literature considers those to be narratives, expository.
And we've been calling it technical writing.
Yes, yes, but if you look at the literature, it will say that.
I always go back and think of what it's gonna look like lower,
Well, I'm
keeping
thinking,
that K-5 in mind.
well, I'm thinking about, well, I don't know that K-5 would do a whole lot of technical writing.
No, but I'm just saying.
Right. My concern is if you put it in there, what happens to it?
And informational.
But my other thing is that like we've had the autonomy to say, we're removing business letters, memos,
They're too informal.
resumes, those kinds of writing from the English classroom, and they are in our business department, and they are teaching them. And in fact, if we even try to go there, they're like, hey, back off, that's our writing.
We've had
It's
that
kinda
same
nice.
experience.
So, but I know that's not the same everywhere, but I would worry about disrupting that autonomy then by saying, cause if it's in the standards for English, it's going in my English curriculum, cause we're aligning to the standards, so, cause by golly, we're gonna make sure that we are in compliance, so.
But the things that I do in the past, 3 years have
Right.
been based on Common Core. They're not based on what my ACF accreditation would be. I'm still teaching to those standards, even if it's not within the ACF or the American Culinary Federation standards.
Right, I know what you're saying.
You know what I mean? I guess I think, to me, those are so incredibly important
that I know a lot of kids, when I show them a business letter or something like that, it's the first time they've seen it. And as a senior, that should not be the first time that you've seen that stuff. If that's, because even if we're all at this point, college and career readiness, at some point, they all need to be career ready.
Well, and I guess if I think about it, to go back to my idea of the business, department takes my resumes and memos, things like that. Not all my kids take business courses.
Right, what about steps?
Yeah.
The ones that don't.
Yeah, so.
When I think about technical writing, I don't know that it is, I think it uses parts of narrative, but I don't think it's a narrative in itself. The same way that when I write an argument, if I include an anecdote, I'm including narrative writing as a part of that argument.
Right.
And I will include some explanatory writing as a piece of that. But
Definitely.
right, I wouldn't say that a business letter or a technical guide to making an M&M is going to include narrative writing.
Well, narrative is, written in a sequence.
Right, it has a
And it
beginning,
uses
a middle, and an
sequence
end.
where it's like first, next, then. So it just it's just a matter of semantics, I
Well,
guess.
some narratives do that, but when you read William Faulkner, he don't.
I'm talking about, I'm not talking about fictional narratives, I'm talking about real narratives. When you look at real narratives, you have your autobiographies, you have your biographies, and you have your description of
But
processes.
even they aren't always, especially autobiographies, often have a lot of flashbacks
Yeah.
and all kinds
yeah.
of stuff.
So maybe
I
it's,
would
Maybe
say
it's,
they
I mean,
are.
I'm not sure where it lives, maybe it lives in informational, I mean, there are a couple of places in, South Carolina in the English 3, they're broken down into informational pieces. Resumes, memos, letters, requests, inquiry, complaints, but then in English 4, it's broken down into create clear and concise career-oriented and technical writings, for example, memos, business letters, resumes, technical reports, those kind of things. So, I mean, they're contradictory.
yeah, so, yeah, I think it maybe bears like us putting it here and then taking that conversation further and deeper as we try to like flesh out standards. But one of the things that I know that I did not like about the GLEs was that those types of writing just felt thrown in there to me. And that I felt like we had a, an English, and especially around that, English 2 level, I felt like we would be doing some survey work on literature, and then all of a sudden we was like, okay, now hold everything, we're gonna do a career unit so that we can address these other pieces that
Get
were
it in.
required, yeah.
So that you
So
learn
I'd
how to
like
write
to
a
make
letter.
sure that we are very thoughtful about how do those things get woven in there, so they don't feel like put the brakes on, now we're addressing this, so we cover it. And which is how I feel about some of the social
Like,
things right
it's
now
the end of
also.
the year, I haven't done poetry in a while.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of poetry, with poetry and plays, where would that live?
Yeah, that was
First
first
reading
creative.
poetry.
Writing, poetry and writing, skits, plays.
Drama would be a form of narrative.
They would be in a,
Poetry's
well, they
just-
are a genre, and they would
There's no
definitely be in a
creative.
creative
But then
writing
again, it's
class,
this-
but do we need them as standards for required English course? I'm not saying that I don't think a 9th grade teacher would never assign write a poem. I know as an AP Lit teacher, I assigned write a sonnet, cause then they'd start figuring out how a sonnet works. So I get that, but I'm saying, do we really wanna put, I don't know if we wanna put that in. You know what I mean?
I guess it goes back to
Is it-
when I was trying to figure out that personal writing, like you were saying, where do we put that creative stuff? Where do we put, there has to be a place for it, but
Because we
maybe I
can't.
just don't know what to call it.
Well,
I
right
don't
now-
either, but I think arguments can be creative, narrative, I
Yeah.
mean, it's integrated, good writing is gonna be.
Yeah, like right now, my kids are writing a poem, but they're writing a narrative poem. It has to be a narrative, because it has to have a beginning, middle, and end. It has to have a quotation, it has to have, certain things.
Well, and I know from past experience with GLEs that when poetry writing is put in there, then all of a sudden my kids are every year producing a book of poems, and everyone does the same thing, an acrostic poem, a haiku, and it's like the same, and there's not, well, and then maybe
And
we
they're all
could-
about
maybe
thwarted
we could
love
do
and
it.
you wanna throw up.
But they're all about a very specific structure, and the only purpose is to meet the requirement of you told me I have to write poetry, now I've written poetry, I'd like to see it in the service of something.
Kids were writing raps and songs.
You know, like deeper, better.
Right.
You know, so how do we, I mean, if we put that in there, how do we make sure that we aren't setting up our students for, now I get to write a haiku again for the third year in a row. Wow, I didn't know anything about those when I came in the room.
That's either about love or trees.
Yeah.
Seems to be the
Nature.
Love or trees. Okay, I added technical writing. What else do we need to do with this one? Am I in your way if I'm sitting here? Can you see around me? Casey?
I can, I just can't keep my glasses clean, but that's another issue.
You can see around me though?
Yes.
Okay. Cause I would move.
Again, we've danced around it at different times, but something related to language about word choice. When we have the precise and effective, but to me that's very genre specific, because there are other times where you want to choose like figurative language, or there's times where you want to choose, I don't know, I guess I'm just wondering if we need a in the same way that we have like elaboration and detail and organization. To me, language, going back to Maridella's point, like when you zoom down to the sentence level or the paragraph level or the individual even word choice level, like I don't see that reflected up here yet.
Yeah, like clarity.
Yeah,
Right.
like descriptive language,
Right.
using language that's that effectively captures your meaning.
Don't you think
Style
that would
and
go
voice
under-
appropriate to purpose.
I get-
Yeah, style.
Style and
voice.
voice appropriate to purpose.
Oh, we
that
didn't,
up
I
there?
never did add the voice piece, did I?
Right.
Yeah,
Style
yeah,
and
more, that's
voice,
exactly
both.
what I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah,
Style
so,
and voice, both.
Voice is
Using-
really important. Okay, so just style and voice
that's
for now?
that captures
Would
it.
style be?
Precise.
Well, I mean, it would,
Sentences.
yeah, I mean, it
Or word
just kinda
choice.
depends on your purpose, yeah.
Depending on what you're writing.
Like
Why you're writing.
flashback, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you know, stylistic.
But I
Okay.
think that wording would be more specific later
Right.
on once we break it down into the different types
And I
of
do
writing.
think we need something else with digital writing. There's a lot more than just digital compositions now that's happening.
Digital communication and or composition. What do you mean?
But just digital writing right now, notability is how kids are writing in one-to-one classrooms. Evernote, digital writing, knowing how to, well, we've got produced digital communication, but it's really different than just knowing what digital writing looks like in a one-to-one classroom right now. Knowing how to interface notability, take a document and write with it, write on it.
Okay.
And that's what they're doing in one-to-one classrooms
So
right now.
are you saying something like use technology in the writing process as opposed to creating digital compositions is one
Oh,
thing,
okay.
like using
Right. As a
technology as
tool.
a
Okay.
composition
As a
tool?
tool
So I
and
can
not
use,
the
I can use it
production.
in, like, yeah, so I
Yeah.
can, okay, use it in the writing process.
Students are also sharing.
Well, that's why I said the collaborative, develop
They're
collaborative
collaborating
writing.
and sharing and on
With Google
technology.
Docs and
Right.
Google
Yes.
presentations.
And peer editing.
But even just Nearpod, like right now,
Yes.
we could be
Right.
writing on something and I could shoot it over to Lindsay's
And-
computer through Nearpod, we could be recording this and not have to rewrite it later if we were doing it digitally.
think
This would
that's-
interface with that and we wouldn't have to rewrite it.
I'm really all about the digital, but not so much.
So just-
That's easy, I had Dragon speak on for just a
I
little
like
bit,
the-
just to see it, it didn't like the gunna and some of the things we were saying, but it handled it pretty well.
Okay, so
I
what
like
did
the
you say?
use
Cause
tech-
I lost
use
it.
technology as a tool for
Yeah.
composition or something like that.
Well, there's also the composing.
Yeah, we've got
Well, we
that, we've
have
got
the
that
one,
link
that's where I was
earlier.
seeing, we have the
We've got
composing, but
create
not just
digital
the
Just be that you're using
technology as a
technology to
tool.
support writing?
Yeah, to support writing,
Or to
in the
write, in general, the one-to-one classrooms are going
Oh,
paperless.
that, it was
So
in the, it
they're
was
gonna
in
be
the writing process.
Composing
in
everything.
The writing process.
Battle High School struggling with that. Well,
That's
that
actually
means to be completely paperless, but.
How do we collaboratively write a Google document?
Okay, you said earlier, use technology in the writing process, or something along those lines,
It's very-
that's good, cause it's, depending upon where we are,
Yeah.
you know, what tool do I wanna use, that's gonna make it better for me, yeah, perfect. Okay, is there anything else?
Clustering time?
You said you like the short research mentioned. So
Short and yeah,
Oh, I do like that too.
I do
Which
too.
one?
that it doesn't, I just don't,
Don't think it belongs here.
well, I do, because it's frustrating to me that, what I disliked about the old school GLE please is that, the research there made it seem like everybody needed to do this month-long research project with an 11-page paper and blah, 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 when it's just not necessary to do that lengthy of research every single time.
Especially
And-
short
Right.
as well as sustained research projects.
Conducting both, like conduct short.
You vary 'em. Sometimes they're short, sometimes
Because
they're
that gives you
lengthy.
permission to do.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And actually with the
Well, and also the nice thing
informational
is I was gonna say, it lends itself well to, like, thinking about how it's informational or how it can be argument, because
if you're gonna have source-based writing prompts that ask for evidence as support, students are gonna have to do quick on-demand research.
Yeah, especially with one-to-one initiative.
Right.
You know,
so short and
at the
sustained
very
research.
Yes.
Conduct
Right.
short and sustained research.
And then
I'm glad you said that, I like that.
Something else that I've been thinking about, I have a feeling that it's somewhere else, but, when I think about technical writing, choosing graphics for.
Yes.
Illustrative
Or
graphic.
just even
It's
graphics,
enhanced-
tables, charts.
Some sort of,
Enhancing your
yeah,
maps,
enhancing your writing
diagrams.
through graphics.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Illustrations.
Infographics.
Where does that go?
Infographics.
I don't know where it
right?
goes.
Is it its own separate thing? Like that is, I feel like that's so
I think
huge.
that's its own.
It is.
Because,
But it's also integrated information from sources.
It's part of that producing.
yeah, cause
Yeah.
I know that my kids that, like, the integrating part is so important, because it's choosing what is going to best support or best explain or best help my reader,
Yeah.
as opposed to just, well, I'm writing something on the Civil War and here are some random pictures from the Civil War.
Well,
You
so
know,
that's
which is
also-
what I hate.
Gather relevant information and then integrate
It's
kind of those
Yeah.
together.
There.
It's really
So
what it
maybe
is.
it needs to just be including
Visual
visual.
text. Or visual,
Graphics
yeah.
appropriate to, or
Yeah.
relevant to.
Does
Yeah.
that get to what you're thinking?
Parentheses,
Yeah.
Relevancy.
Including
quotes,
visual, yeah.
paraphrase, summary, what did we call them? This is like being seventh hour, I don't know.
It is seventh hour.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, we know it's past 7 hours.
They have to finish my sentences all the time. I'm like, I don't know.
My seventh hour was always, did I already say this?
Yes.
Did I tell you this already, or was that somebody else?
Stop me if I said this. Yes, you said it 17 times. Sorry.
Graphics, illustration, whatever.
Yep.
Nice, okay. Behold the brilliance in this room. Okay, what else? Really, we're out of paper, so there can't be anything else.
Clusters?
You ready to try to cluster these? So that means I need this paper.
Research is the easy one. Right? I think, I hope.
On this technology one, this one has clustered a lot of things. Use technology, including the internet, to produce and publish writing, as well as to interact and collaborate with others. Demonstrate sufficient command and keyboarding skills.
Which notice we did not include on there.
Yeah.
I think that's on the
Use
what we don't
technology in the
want.
writing process.
Use technology.
I think that's on our what we don't want in our standards list.
We didn't mention to produce and publish writing.
We do, we've got produce digital communication in our compositions. And really, produce writing appropriate for audience and purpose could be digitally. Good choice.
So I would propose research as a strand. I don't think that's a radical
Oh,
proposal.
Get these down.
And that should be one to pretty easily knock a few off the list.
You mean cluster?
As a cluster?
As a cluster, I'm sorry.
Just wanna make sure you get it right.
As a cluster.
Get it right.
We should by now, really.
Oh, no, by now it's gonna start to. Oh, these are all right.
All right, on
Did that fall?
research, do we have gather relevant information from multiple print and digital sources?
Yeah, basically.
We just have gathered all the information, all right.
Oh, sort
Yeah.
of.
If I put this over here, is that okay?
Yeah.
Sure. For the luster,
Clusters.
for now.
Does Concord, doesn't it mean,
I've looked over.
it non-addresses it.
No.
Right.
Some of the other standards address person.
Yeah, and I was wondering where that would move.
I do not, I really would say I do not wanna see that in standard, but that's an elementary thing anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's, third grade.
Is that elementary?
Is it third grade?
Not
anymore.
No, it's not in my students.
I had to
don't
teach my
teach
son at
any
home
courses
this summer.
anymore.
Yeah, it's just about gone. I know.
Well, we have it. I know you may not have learned it, but we have it.
You do, but he missed it.
Oh, okay, I was like, I know we have it, cause I just bought materials to
Few
support that.
Columbia schools.
Yeah.
So,
do it.
okay.
He
What
got
color
it
is
in
it?
fourth grade.
Research.
I would color.
Oh, are we gonna, well,
Are we gonna separate research and make
It's
it?
an elementary thing.
What did we do last time? Last time we like circle all the ones that were the same and then try to put them into one? Is that what we did, or did we circle them afterward?
I thought.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like we
I
looked
do,
at-
I'm trying to remember.
I thought, we kinda like.
If we see that, like, I'm looking at that left side and I'm going, surely, I agree with, Nick about the research-based writing, that's one, but, types and purposes of writing is another one, when you start looking at analyses,
Should we maybe like knock standards off one at a time? So like research, if we all agree research is a cluster, can we knock the research ones off?
Okay, so.
Under that.
Hold on. Let's get
Yeah,
some.
it is. Right.
You don't think research is a cluster?
No, I
Well,
wanna.
why is it a different cluster than argument?
I would assume research would transcend like any type of writing that you're doing. That's what I meant.
Yes.
Like if you're doing narrative writing, you better be doing research. If you're doing information
In other
writing, you
words,
better be doing
research
research.
skills could be applied to
Research
all
skills
those
could be
types of
crossed
purposes,
together.
which is why I named the
That's
types
all
of
I'm saying.
purposes as another distinct one, if you're looking at it that way.
Okay.
So.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Can we get, we wanna get some consensus on, should we use research as a cluster on its own? To address, so we would take some of these pieces that are very specific to research, this, a
Gather
couple
relevant
others,
information.
and we,
Yes.
so is there?
I think research needs to be its own island,
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I can do that, so I can put research as one, right? So I'm gonna be very specific with writing. Clusters. Okay, so we have research as one. Do you want me to go through and find all the ones that are research?
I think, yeah, that would
And then that'll help,
eliminate-
okay, so
Yeah.
let's, what we did last time,
Some
right?
of them may overlap.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll have to kinda see how that goes, right? So this one clearly, research, I feel like,
Yeah.
like I can make that decision. Okay.
Gather relevant information.
Yeah, and the one above it too.
sources.
Yeah, the two top ones.
Site sources.
Yeah.
What about this one?
Yes.
Yes.
Insight sources. I would argue,
And the
I
top
mean,
one?
The
it
top
blends,
one.
but I would argue the top one fits in the research category.
Integrated
Because
information.
it's what you do with, I mean, it starts to
from
get into craft,
sources.
but yeah. I get it, it saddles two areas,
It
but
does.
I feel like you're only gonna be doing that when you're researching, right?
So
No,
over,
I'm writing an analysis.
over
I'm
on
gonna
another one,
integrate
the first one, locate credible,
Yeah, but I mean,
reliable
if you're
sources.
researching, then
Well, but you know, I mean, you could, like, I guess what you have to do is you have to be very specific about, like, if you're doing
Yes, for
a literary
integrated,
analysis,
right.
and that you're drawing from text that you've read in a class,
It wouldn't have
that
to
doesn't
be.
feel like research.
That's a good one.
It is technically, but it doesn't
I
feel
mean,
like it.
you're citing sources, you're.
My point is we don't teach it that way. I'm
No.
great with us teaching it that way, so they understand that even when I'm going back to something that I know and we've read together
Yeah.
or talked about, that still is research, like that would be
I
great.
would argue it fit, I mean,
But,
you're.
no, I'm not saying it doesn't
Yeah.
fit, I'm just saying that that doesn't feel like
Sure.
it fits naturally because of what we do now with analysis.
You can circle those two.
Avoiding plagiarism.
Barry just pointed
And
out,
locate
collect.
credible.
I mean, you're still
You
doing
can
this with
circle
literary
those.
texts. I don't know. Not the-
See, this is where they're starting to overlap.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's about maybe maybe this term and what we, or how we choose to word that maybe, because it,
Yeah.
because it can't just be, because for too long, everyone just
You're
thinks the
right.
research is, I stop everything I'm doing and I do the research process, and that's not what we're talking about anymore, 'cause that's not how we live,
It's
so.
on-demand research. and-
So these two here,
I think they
so.
fit, but
Okay.
I agree, maybe
Well,
we need
locate
to change the name of the
credible
cluster.
sources.
For sure, yeah.
you know what will happen is when we go,
We can always move
we
them.
can move them. So let's put them there for now, and then this, well,
I'm not sure about that.
for
Well, not move
plagiarism.
them, just share them.
I think it goes with, I mean, again, I feel like it's the byproduct of research, right?
If you
It's
put
like,
short and sustained
why are you
research
researching if not to
projects, they'll
integrate
know that.
into your piece? I don't know, I get your point about literary analysis too, but.
But I would say, I would argue that that should be, like, we should, I don't know, and it's just us in the room, right? But I feel like that we need to help students see that that is still a form of research.
I
You're
mean,
still
in college, they're
going
gonna
back
be
to.
asked to do like a literary, if they're in an English class, right, they're gonna be asked to come up with their own, like, I don't know, again, that you use the word research paper, but you know, you're gonna be asked to come up with your own thesis, and you're gonna do your own literary
Call it an
research,
essay.
and you're gonna be, I mean.
No,
they
but I
haven't
don't,
found
and
out.
I really, if you put it into research, that means that it doesn't belong in analysis, arguments, and narratives.
No, I'm arguing research transcends all of
All
those,
of them.
all of those categories. again.
Right, how are you going to communicate that?
Right.
Like if that,
'Cause the
integrating
teachers see it
information from
under
sources,
research.
if it goes under research, then it doesn't go under argument, and it doesn't go under analysis.
I guess I would suggest, and this is a different conversation, I guess, but I would suggest that we maybe don't wanna have 7 different writing streams, like writing analysis, writing argument, writing narrative. And that instead, much like we did with reading, you say, these are the different types of writing we want you to do, and within those types, you're gonna use these research skills, you're gonna use these writing skills, organization, elaboration, style and voice, you're gonna use these writing process skills, sorry.
That was why I suggested the text types and purposes is another distinction that does seem to me to be distinct from research that crosses several, but nevertheless can be seen as a distinct set.
So if you have
Writing
text
skills.
types and purposes, it would be a cluster, and then under that would be analysis, argument, narrative, informational. And then would that include something like identifying audience and purpose of writing?
Wouldn't
No,
that
that's
be
not-
criteria for judging?
That's crap.
That's crap. Wouldn't a lot of that
That would be more production of the writing.
Wouldn't a lot of that go
Okay.
into scoring guides, criteria for evaluating writing pieces?
Thesis,
Say that
logical
again.
development.
Yeah, I mean, isn't a lot of that criteria for judging the final product?
I don't know what you're
Right,
asking,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm missing the
A
question.
lot of those things that we're expecting of students to do is how we're going to score the product. A lot of that information up there would go into a scoring rubric for writing.
Yeah, like writing conventions, organization, sure, and
Yes.
that's why I said that's
Yes.
another cluster of
And
writing
those,
process.
and those scoring rubrics are gonna look differently for those different types of writing. You have a rubric for argument, you have a rubric for informational text, and you have a rubric for narrative. So a lot of that stuff that's the criteria for judging the writing pieces is gonna cross all the way across the narrative, the informational, and the arguments.
Right, so,
Well, that could be like writing,
So what do you-
producing and distributing writing, and then it has all those things under it that.
I mean-
Production of writing.
It
Yeah.
has characteristics of quality
I'm gonna
writing.
get lost.
I think because there's a difference between developing writing and producing writing.
Yes.
There's two
Drafting.
Yes.
separate
Yes.
schools there of
That's a
what
good
goes
point.
into the development process.
Well, but
Right.
the end of writing process is a product.
Well, we got
Right.
started
Yes,
on
it
this.
is, but you judge the
Yeah.
product
Yeah,
after
we
six
got started on
grades.
this conversation by saying, if we put research as its own thing, cause that's, and then that
Right.
transferred to every other thing, right? But if we put it as its own thing, does it get taught as its own thing? And I think there's a yes and there, like, I don't know. I think those things go together somehow. I don't
There
know,
should be
maybe it's
research
so we
and a lot
don't
of
call it
those
research.
arguments and
Well, you
research.
could call it gathering information, because you always have to gather information before
beyond
you
that.
write.
Yeah, it's beyond that, it's a bunch of.
Well, I
I don't
know,
mind it
no,
as
but you still
research. I
have,
think it's
you
great.
still have to gather information before you
I
write.
see, but I know what you're saying, and look, what we want in our perfect world is for, any educator to look at these writing standards and to see that these things that fall under this research and whatever, if we were to call it research and integration or whatever, those things, they go into the types, and these things about writing process and freezing writing, they go in there too, and,
And
but
then-
I think they can do that with everything else, like in general, but then we get to research, we go, oh, that's research,
Oh, I agree.
But,
you know?
Yeah,
I
because
think-
citing sources, I mean, that's just not a research thing either.
No, it's not.
Not at all. You can have all kinds of
Well, that's
footnotes
why
and
we
things
said
in narrative,
overlap.
and you can
That's
have
why
all
we-
kinds of
well,
things
isn't
in
that why we
memos.
said
Right,
overlap?
John Gray
Yeah,
Some of these
cites
things
so
are
it's just trying to
gonna be
figure out how to best organize it so that it's not.
Well, some of
What
the
about
other,
putting it in 3 categories? The first category would be collecting and gathering information, which includes the research piece. You have to pull together your information. The second piece would be putting together the information. That would be your writing process and your revising and all of that. And then the third piece would be judging your finished product, like your beginning, middle, and end. Your, your beginning, middle, and end, your transitions. So the criteria to judge the finished product. You could take everything up there and put it into 3 different parts.
Those could also together be could be labeled writing process.
well, other
You're
standards,
gathering information, you're,
other
yeah, I
standards
mean-
break it down into developing written communications,
Yeah.
research, and producing written communications in a variety of forms. So they're breaking down the
And then
forms, the process,
that's why I was
and the
saying,
research.
Right.
you could have the
So that
forms
would
as
be
a
the
separate-
same thing, the gathering the information, however you do it, could be research, could be reading 2 articles, whatever. Putting together the information.
Maybe the
And then now let's
research.
judge the information, let's look at the final product.
Like, I see what you're saying about it is involved with everything that we do. Producing it, it's not just, oh, here's a researching unit, but I also feel like they do need to know that research process from
As a
start to
distinct process.
finish
For sure.
as a
Oh, yeah.
skill,
Agreed.
and
Yeah.
so.
No, I wouldn't argue with that. I think my fear is the same as Lindsay's, which is I don't wanna see citing only be taught and applied during research. I don't wanna see the integrating information from sources only applied and taught during research, you know what I'm saying?
I do,
It
but
should
you know
go
what?
both places. It doesn't matter
Why
what.
do you say well,
If
I,
we're overlapping,
I don't, I know
having
we
it both places.
But you
started
could
with the
pretend
that we have a
question
million
about,
standards.
you know, what we wanted to emphasize so that teachers would read
Yeah.
it and know what to, but I think
Yeah.
this is, to me at least, from my years of watching it, an instance where we kinda have to let that go. If teachers, no offense, but if they're that dumb, that they don't realize, no, I mean, seriously. You know, I mean, I'm sorry to say that,
But again,
it's
you don't
embarrassing, but it's true.
Right, and you don't wanna cross that line over into now curriculum writers are having to go and put this in because we put it in there, and then you have that whole argument again of now they're telling us we have to teach it here, and it will happen.
Yeah, because this document is supposed to be what's going to be in there, not,
Essential.
yeah, not how you understand that and then put it into curriculum.
Like,
We
we
can't tell them
understand it
in this
different.
document how
Oh,
to do
no,
it.
but I think we just need to be as clear as possible
Well, I
and
agree.
not steer them
Yeah.
in the wrong direction.
And I apologize, I'm gonna have to run to the Little League soccer game. But I do think I liked at least the first part of what Jana was saying. If we think about like our reading standard clusters again as sort of an approach to reading, like approaching the text as a reader, approaching the text as a writer, approaching the text as a researcher. I do kind of like the idea of maybe what could we make our writing clusters have that same approach, which starting with
Sequence.
a gathering
You gotta get the
and
information.
gathering and integrating information is kind of your first
Applying the
step.
skills of inquiry.
I don't know. That's food for thought. I apologize. I have to run
I
over.
guess as I was hearing this conversation, I guess what I would say is, it sounds like it doesn't always happen in the classroom that research is taught as a skill. I'm kind of getting that, maybe I'm misinterpreting this.
No, you're right.
But I'm getting that, okay, so I'm getting that. So if that's the case, then it makes sense that if we think it's as important as we do, which we do think it's becoming more and more important, it seems like,
Mhm.
to research everything in this information age, then what Jana was saying
I put that down, gather and integrate question mark, cause that's kind of the other language we're talking around, so we can remember that we had that conversation, get back to it tomorrow. So, where do we go from here? We've had a couple different,
So I can think on it.
sorry.
Sorry,
how about-
okay, I just wanna be able to
Oh, yeah.
think on it and look at it.
How
and-
about a strand, with the
Thank you.
focuses on producing, writing, and the writing product, so from process to product or something like that, the whole writing production, and
Is that writing process?
it would include that. And
I think
it
process
would
and
include
production?
the process and then the actual distribution of the writing, because eventually you have these communications that come out of the process. If that makes sense, maybe it does.
Process and production, process.
Process and well, just production and distribution of
Production and
writing,
distribution.
or distributing it digitally, or writing magazines.
But like as its own strand, so then all those things that are related to the writing process, and then also
And then
related to the
getting
production and
yeah.
distribution, fall under that under that
Like
cluster?
a presentation kind of a, like not.
Yeah, that's it,
Like a
producing,
presentation type.
Like all those
producing and
decisions you make.
presenting writing, yeah.
Right.
So from the beginning of the process to the actual finished product, in whatever form it's in, whether it's an email, or it's a formal essay, or it's a poem, or whatever. You finish it at some point, and you'd like to go back and revise it some more, or maybe you wouldn't.
Alright. But
See
you're
what I'm
done.
getting
You
at
turned it
now.
in and
But
you're
you're
done.
finished.
Finished.
You're finished.
You're finished.
So that would all go under the writing process.
At the last step.
So the other,
well,
other standards
uh-huh.
are written as production and distribution of writing.
Yeah, I kinda like that one,
Mhm.
cause it's about the process.
And then
So
you
they
get
have
it
research to
distributed.
build and present knowledge, production and
Mhm.
distribution of writing,
So
and then they do, text types and purposes.
what would be the difference then in the final part of the writing process?
The final part,
Like what would be the difference between?
okay, editing,
Well, no, I mean, that's still part of, when I look at the writing process and all the steps, I guess I've always looked at that last step, it could be whatever you wanted it to be.
Publishing.
They publish it,
Mhm.
they present it, they
well, I
do
think that's why
something on it.
distribution is, you could share it with a partner, you could actually publish it for a particular audience, you could deliver it as a speech, I mean, that,
So it
all
could
of
be
those are
production,
public, yeah, they're
publishing, or
distributing
production,
it some
publication.
way or another, an audience.
But isn't that the final step of the writing? I don't know. Cause I know she's got writing process
Right.
up there and it's not just
Okay, so
consisting
you're
of
just
revising
saying,
and editing.
when you say writing process, it
I
includes
guess
publishing.
whenever I've done it, it could have included and that
Mhm.
final thing that they finished could be a
Mhm.
speech, an email, a
Right. Yes.
PowerPoint, a Prezi, whatever choice.
Well, we can list writing process, and then
Yeah, and the only thing I'm,
Unless
thinking
there's
is,
something
is
different
at this
in
moment,
there.
no, I don't think so, I'm just wondering, does that keep you from reading through the standards then, the writing process?
I just say I got that on.
I got that, and not looking at, well, actually, it also includes
But if we put it in
producing
the
digital
narrative,
communication.
Are we still being a good narrative?
Which, and that goes
Yeah.
back to what Lindsay's concern was earlier about the
Writing
revising
process
and
and
editing, if
product.
we just say writing price, like you said, I'm
Mhm.
good.
Yeah.
Could
Yeah.
we say the writing process and product?
Well, on your
I can
product,
say what I would want.
I noticed that on the Missouri Learning
So
Standards.
much power.
I know,
Under narrative, they give the criteria of what they expect on the narrative. We also have some of that same criteria up on this board. Alright, so we have a choice of where we can put some of that criteria. We can put it under the type of writing, like under narrative, you want a narrative that does this, 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 and this. Or, under the revision section, where it says thou shalt revise your paper.
Thou shalt.
You could put those same criteria under there, what quality looks like.
But I'm still, we're gonna have to put something else underneath narrative, argument, and informational. We're gonna have to identify those or talk about claim and counterclaim. Talk
That's
about
where it is.
supporting with evidence, talk about those things because we
Yeah.
can't just leave it as
No.
write analysis, write an argument, write a narrative. And I also get concerned with, I've been really thinking about what somebody brought up and it is very true and I only think through my former district, that one of the downfalls of the current learning standards is that it does tie you into those three things, and that those three modes need to be a great big production. And so it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for on-demand writing, whether that is a paragraph or an essay or whatever it is, but daily writing that happens in class and across content areas. So, you know, whether that's an exit ticket that you talk about, an inference that you made that day, whatever it is, that I don't know that we have, that I don't wanna fall into that same.
And I wanna make sure, like what you're saying, instead of not just leaving that there, but I think that there does need to be under analysis, under argument, under narrative, there needs to be that strong progression for us, from 6 through 12. And it has to be, there has to be specifics laid out, other than here, go write an analysis, or here, go write an argument.
Yeah, and it needs to be, you know,
And
what
that's
the
where we're gonna
narrative is around, so
embed some of these other pieces, once we start to figure that out.
Writing's hard.
It is hard.
I think there is a standard in here that says produce clear and coherent writing in which the development, organization, and style are appropriate to the task, purpose, and audience, which opens the door to different types of writing, the short kind. You know, that opens the door.
Kind of.
It does, except for I feel like that, and I
Which you could give
we bridge
examples.
that here though. I feel like we got that, cause we have produced writing in various forms
And
for a variety of purposes, and we kind of put, you know, a for instance in there because those are the things we were talking about earlier. So, because we have to be really careful, we did talk about, we don't want to be limited to those three types only. So I think we have that. The question right now is, how do you want to organize those ideas?
if you look at the way they're currently organized, under narrative, it has 5 things.
In which document?
It's the, progressions.
I mean, how many times do you guys take your papers and like move that little arrow and say like this sentence should go up here?
Yeah.
And that, you know, I always see that on everyone's papers, like, I think that it's key to one of the points that we're getting at here, which is the, in the forms for a variety, it's not just forms, it's the clarity and the organization and the thought
Right.
that we're, it's maybe broken for here.
Does craft fall under the writing process?
Yeah.
Cause that's
That's
where
why
your
when you're
word choice
doing
comes in, that's where your
revising,
voice comes in, and that's,
right.
okay. Alright.
It's in drafting too.
What if we did,
Produce writing in various forms for a variety of purposes. Do you wanna divide that then into informal and formal, so then you pick up some of that daily writing as an informal
well,
kind,
when I
and
looked
then
at
the
that,
formal is.
I like that one, and I like the writing on demand, and the produce writing appropriate for audience and purpose, with those, I like that those, and the produce digital communication and or compositions, which is going to be a part of that we haven't necessarily had before. So maybe it is one of our headings, is production. This production and distribution of writing. And then let's see what falls under there, and then let's see what's left.
Okay, so thinking, okay, so thinking that.
Production and distribution.
So think
Right.
about these things going together. Shall I circle or shall I not?
Maybe underline.
Underline.
Okay. So we're thinking that one, we're thinking this one, we're thinking
Production.
this one,
Next one.
Produce writing
Produce
appropriate
writing
for
Produce writing
purposes.
appropriate.
this one. Those come under,
What about
Production
writing
and
process?
distribution.
Does that go under production?
Yes.
Writing process goes under production?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which also means revision does.
maybe
And
that one.
collaborative writing?
Yes.
Revision and, writing conventions. It's over in the
Here's,
top.
this, you said this, yes?
Yes.
Okay, I was looking for it, I'm sorry. and then I kinda tune you out when I look for it.
What about the different types, the short and lengthy writing, short and sustained writing? Is that written up there?
We have research, short and sustained research, we have
Oh,
a
okay,
variety of
never
forms
mind.
and purposes,
Right.
reflection
Never mind.
reviews.
Should writing
Did you
con-
said something
writing
else that I did not get.
conventions.
I said that conventions, if you put writing process in there, then writing conventions comes under that editing.
I feel like this comes over there too.
Uh-huh.
It does.
Yeah, production, sure.
Yeah, but,
Okay.
Is there anything else that you feel like comes under that?
Well, yeah, really,
I don't know, escape without marker there, but
in the whole process of in producing a piece of writing, you have to identify
That's what I
audience,
was gonna
purpose,
say.
style, employees, elaboration. I mean, those are all part of
And use
producing writing.
precise and effective language.
Yeah, they're all in there.
So this one goes there too?
Depends on what we're going to do with that.
So if,
That
so
one
if we're
doesn't?
having research and production and distribution, is there another cluster that doesn't, it's missing, is it that types of writing?
That's
That's
what's
there?
left out, yeah.
Cause that's what looks like
And then we
is
have to
left.
have that conversation.
This falls under types?
No.
No, I'm
No,
just saying, would
that's
that
another-
be,
Oh.
that would be our other cluster.
Right, be the other cluster.
Cause it would include this,
Right,
this.
and then,
Technical
and
writing.
then we have
This.
to have that
Oh, this has
conversation
to
about.
go.
Style and voice has to go under.
That goes under this one, and so does audience and purpose,
And so does
elaboration and detail, yeah. And then
What does this?
audience, yeah,
A lot.
I know.
And the last
And
bullet
the last
bottom,
one,
maybe
then,
there's
yeah,
something
it's
under
precise and
language.
effective. Right.
What about this guy that, or we said
That's
we're not touching
production.
that one, right? We're not
Well, it's
touching that.
production.
Oh, we are, okay.
Well, it depends.
There's a lot of green up here, people.
There is. So maybe we split it when we're done,
Okay.
but we know that those
I'm okay
other
with that.
Aren't
text
some of
types.
those, rather than just a writing process, aren't some of them describing the quality of the written piece? Like you want
Which
elaboration and
comes in,
detail in your written
comes
piece?
in revision.
Right, that's part of revision though, right?
Mhm.
Really about how you're producing it and why you're producing it and.
Yeah, I mean, elaboration detail could be part of
So-
drafting if you are adept, and then it
Where's
could
that
be part
go?
of revising.
Yeah.
That's
What do you mean parts of
conventions.
speech, Jill?
is that more in language?
Nouns, verbs, subject, predicate.
Yeah, that's in language, cause it's grammar.
Well, I'm
Well,
just,
that's what I
I'm
wondered. Does that
tagging
go
off
in
of what we
language?
said this morning, which I thought was a great idea to be redundant. Because I think if you don't stick it in there, then the teachers might not go over it.
Right.
And certainly in the middle school, because there's this broad assumption, they know it,
Yeah.
right?
Well, but I guess,
They don't know it in college.
well, I think we can have a real interesting philosophical conversation about use of speech, cause I would argue at some point it doesn't matter anymore. And I know that that's probably like nails on a chalkboard to some people, but I feel like by the time they got to me in English 3, if they didn't know which word was a noun in the sentence, it didn't matter, cause they were still writing using them. So at some point I have to stop teaching that explicitly and just continue to teach the writer how to move through the process. So I'm not gonna talk to them in terms of, you need to add more nouns, or look at your nouns. We're gonna talk about looking at specific details and being precise with our word choice and things like that, so.
Well, that would come in very probably later when we're,
Right.
layering this. I think
Right.
sixth, seventh, and eighth, it's still important.
Well, I think it's important, thinking about my folks going in to teach, because it needs to be integrated into editing and revising. They can't edit it if they can't identify
Especially
what it
adjectives,
is,
and they're
and the
not-
show me, don't tell me.
So it goes in the green?
Well, I don't know if it goes in the green, but I think it needs to stay in the
Green.
writing and not the language.
Well, we're kind of on the writing
Production.
process and producing writing.
Right.
So, and you're talking, the reason I said that was because you're talking about in terms of revising and editing.
It seems
So it
like
feels
it
like it
does to me,
falls.
because it's part of editing.
yeah, it's pretty.
It's green.
Okay, and my only, going back to what Carrie said, I still want a definition of parts of speech, because, it does seem to me that I have had many students who used, nouns and verbs and adjectives and adverbs and all of those things quite effectively. But it wasn't because they could identify them as adverbs. And so are we saying they're supposed to be able to identify them, or they're supposed to be able to use them?
Use them, if it's
I would
writing.
say- Well, I would
If
say
they're
both,
useful,
even if
maybe
in sixth
both.
grade, because I have two sixth graders that I work with daily, and we review this quite a bit. They just, I think partly they don't think it's important.
Are they
But
using
again,
it correctly in writing?
what
or
do you
they-
review? Do you
No,
review it?
they don't use it correctly in writing actually, because they're so used to the slang off of text messages and emails that it's impeded their formal speech, even in writing.
Okay, so for now, I'm gonna put it there. Alright, that's a battle for later.
Second,
Okay.
solve our research question. No, that was our original question.
With this one?
Yeah.
It does. So, it feels like all I have left are the types of writing. Okay, so, can I name this? Green? Do you want it to be production of writing, production, distribution, writing process and distribution, production and process?
Let's see what's.
Did we say developing, producing?
What did you say earlier, Carrie?
I think it was under.
You said production and
and distribution was what one state said.
Do we wanna add process in it? Say
Some of the others were, let's see.
Like South Carolina uses developing, under writing they have developing and then producing written communications.
Yes,
As one thing?
No, under their writing, they have developing written communications and then producing written communications, and then research process and production is a separate, and those are the
I like
three
that.
things.
You did.
What's under the production?
Why don't you like that?
Because the production's so much part of the process.
Yeah, I don't like it because I feel like it pulls it too apart.
Well,
So you
and
don't like the
now
word
the evolution of
producing?
digital,
Yeah.
it takes, I don't know, I feel like all of that's better.
Producing written communications in a variety of forms.
Which is more of that types of writing to me. In a variety of forms.
Oh.
That falls under that type
Well,
of
and
writing.
we have that, we actually put that here,
Cause they have,
but maybe that
like
needs to be
Casey was
somewhere
saying, we
else.
have producing written communications in variety of forms, and listed under all those are create narrative, create
Right.
descriptive, create persuasive. But then they have the, developing written communications, which is
More
the grammar,
process.
the mechanics, the process.
See, and all of those go back many, many years to those old modes of writing, and that was
Yes.
the whole rhetorical model
Yes.
approach to writing. So
I
do
was
we wanna
thinking
go
that.
there or not? Yeah.
I think we
that's
just
what
need to
I was
decide on
thinking.
a structure and if possible, the most simplified one that we can.
Mhm.
To where we
I
can
feel
get
like-
everything under.
I feel like there is a writing process, and I think it's important for students to know it and to use it. But I feel like they need to see the connection of that in everything else, and I kinda hate to pull it apart from the production piece because,
But it's also
I
the
want them-
developing piece too.
right, no, right.
You know what I'm?
Yeah, but I feel like that's all together, like, I feel like now more than ever, that everything is at the same time, it's,
But what I'm asking is, what did you have in mind with the production piece? Is the production piece you produce a narrative, or you produce an argument? Okay, so she's talking about text types there.
oh, okay.
All
Yeah.
of those final
Yeah.
Sorry.
things
Yeah.
that we want them to be able to do
Right.
is the production.
Okay.
All of your other.
These are the products and arguments.
Right, right.
I
That's
got
the
it.
production. The developing is the
Writing
editing and
process.
I got it.
revising
Yeah.
and, right.
I'm with you, okay, so then.
I'm just trying to think logically,
Okay, no,
how
that's
to
fine.
organize it all and
No,
what.
And the
what-
only
But you're
problem
not
I
saying to
have
put
with
it in
text
one, like
types
we could say
is when you
developing,
start listing
producing,
them, then.
and distributing,
Now.
that's big.
I do
Yeah, so
think
big.
it's
That's
fine to
big.
have our
As a
students
teacher, I look
be
at it and go,
aware of the most
whoa.
basic ones,
Right.
which I feel like we do have with narrative, argument, informational. But
Production, and then what was the other one?
Developing.
Developing,
So then-
So
producing,
okay.
and distributing.
So
that's
then
the
my-
writing
And
process.
it
I
doesn't
think-
have to be that way. I mean,
No.
I've seen other states that have done it through analysis and through arguments and and then they have all those other, there's other ways to do this.
Yeah, that's just a little more cumbersome.
Exactly.
But if we were to go down that road of like production, and then developing, I don't know why I can't get that. I feel like writing on demand would go under production. Right, or we also.
A lot of them would
All-
cross
yeah.
over, we would have a.
Yeah, you're gonna
Some
have to
writing
write
on
through
demand,
layer
but
and-
writing on demand is almost more of a type of writing.
Well, no, cause writing on demand, it's a type in the sense that you have to do it really fast and you have one shot, which
Right.
makes it distinct.
But it
But
could
you
be-
could have a writing on demand that is
I'll
an
say, well,
argument,
yeah,
or it is
in
an
fact, we might,
analysis, or it is
we
an
might pull that out
analysis.
as being its own thing and embed it in the other ones, like including
we
on
already
demand,
kinda did
including
that.
on demand,
We
including on
already-
demand.
We already did that by putting green under. See what I mean? It's now if you look at what we
I
have
get it.
left.
For example,
Okay.
I just pulled, under the developing one, they might have using, graphic organizers,
Right.
using complete sentence types, central idea,
Okay.
revising for tone and voice, editing for standard
Yeah.
English, and then under
It
the
is.
producing, create informational pieces, create, you know, and then they give examples, like a book, a movie, product reviews, news report,
So
for a
there's-
specific audience.
There's product and there's development.
Right, and so under that, you have your expository, you have your argumentative, you have your, I mean, either way, you're gonna have overlap, whether you choose to organize it under the writing pieces, or whether you choose to do it, it all eventually,
Well, I think if you put it under the writing pieces, then it becomes this
Very object.
laundry list, and then it does
Exactly.
become this one big project that we do.
It becomes a
as
checkup.
opposed to we do narratives.
right.
A
So-
lot, and we do informational a lot. It becomes, oh my gosh, I do this big narrative unit because look at all the standards I have to hit within that narrative, and then I have to go
Other-
back and do
other-
Right.
informational and.
I'm just thinking
Yeah.
for
No, that makes
simplistic
sense.
purposes,
So producing writing as a cluster and developing writing as a cluster, or not necessarily in that order?
One state has it as the writing process.
Yeah,
You know, they've got the writing
Right.
process,
Okay.
they've got
Okay.
writing,
I'm gonna
writing
try it,
process, writing genres, and research.
Yeah.
Are,
It is
Yeah.
writing
That's-
process, Karen.
Writing process.
Yes.
Writing
I do
genres
too,
and
because we
research,
included in
and
the
that's
writing
our
process.
three.
right,
Always been.
it just, it is.
And then you'd have either writing types or writing genres or something that then
like
takes in
text
those
types,
others.
writing
Yeah.
genres, I mean,
So are you putting, what are you putting under writing process? Are you filling that in now or what?
It's all
It's
that.
green.
Okay.
So writing, what do you want here? Genres?
Why don't you just put writing genres / text types and we can debate that one.
Okay, thank you. Cause that one's gonna be probably a debate.
Yeah.
And we can probably combine some of those because we don't want a listing, you know, like writing on demand, we might wanna put that with something else.
That's what she said.
We already had it green in part for that reason, that it's a skill as opposed to a type. Since writing on demand can be any of those types.
Right.
Okay.
You know, just because we said we'd work till 5 doesn't mean we have to, does it?
Yes,
Brain dead, I
it
can't
does.
No, no.
I wanna bet?
Take the marker away from her.
Oh.
Alright, and we're getting enough time.
Calling the shots.
Cause she has a marker, she thinks she's in charge.
We've done
I
it.
am. You did that to me. You made me write it
From
all.
here to 12
Now I think I'm in charge. I offered the markers to everybody else earlier.
Just you wait till tomorrow. Run up there.
So where are we?
Okay, so, I was really hoping that by the time we left here tomorrow at 3 and no later than 3, that we would have, I gotta orient myself, we would have clusters like this, or like that, for speaking, listening, and now language. It's, yeah, anyway, I'm gonna tell you where I was hoping we would go, and then you guys can
We can do that.
figure out, okay, so I was hoping we'd have that, that might be easier, but we thought writing would be easier than it was. And that we would take those and kind of refine them, so, I mean, like, what you have, what I typed up for reading literary texts is not real pretty, and some of the language is not great. I think we would agree that for, you know, a bunch of English people in the room, it's not the best language. So that we would refine that, and then vote to approve that and move forward with those, and then we can take that forward to December. So those are two things I was hoping we'd do tomorrow, and then the third thing is, next Monday is the public hearing on what we've done to this point, right? So then we would discuss what gets presented. I got an email that said, any documents we want to share need to be, shared by Wednesday. So, like tomorrow, the decision needs to be made. What will we move forward and what do we not feel comfortable yet sharing? I don't know if there's anything at this point that we don't feel comfortable sharing. I feel pretty good about all this. I'd like it to be refined and not look so messy. And then finally, the last thing is to discuss, when and how this discussion take place with the K-5 group. I've touched base with them a little bit on, they're gonna be back here in December also, and just what should that look like, and you know, and maybe we don't decide tomorrow what that looks like, maybe we wait and see where they are after their November meeting, and we, I asked their liaison or chair, I'm not really sure what her, she's the chair, I think, maybe she's the liaison also, Tanya, to, for us to engage in conversation back and forth about, like, here's what we've done, where are you, and that I would share all of this with her, and then talk through our process, so that maybe we could even save them some steps. And like, if we've identified these and they like them, then maybe they could use them, if not, then that's fine, but maybe it would be helpful then, if they're not to that point, we could just take it and run with it, cause I know that if the tables were turned, or roles reversed, I would sure love it if someone else had already done all that hard work, and we could just take it and go with it.
If Kara would add something, I'm a little, we said we made this point already, I apologize, but, the other thing I think before the public hearing is that they're gonna wanna know that we at least coordinated with K-5, because we're supposed to be integrated, so that would be something that we can discuss tomorrow. I don't wanna, if there's a difference of opinion, I wanna get started on it now, but I think that whoever's at the public, that you're gonna be at the
Yes.
public hearing?
Yes.
Yeah, I would just expect that as a question put into it.
Okay. Well, and like I said, I emailed she's emailed me, I'm emailing her back, so we at least in contact, so. Anyway, that was.
Are they meeting tomorrow?
No, they're not meeting again until November. I don't remember the dates they're meeting, I've asked her to share those dates, I can't remember. I guess I could look it up on Desi's website and see it, I'll just share.
Are they gonna be here on the first and second? Like,
They'll be here on the first, I
Okay.
believe. I don't know if it's first and second.
Okay.
I haven't gotten that far in my conversation, so I don't know. So anyway, that was kind of what I was thinking about for tomorrow, so hopefully we can chug along and get through some of that, but we'll see how it goes. But at the very least, we cannot walk out of here without having decided what goes forward the following Monday. Because
Okay, so
I don't
what
wanna
we-
just walk in there and be like, so we did some stuff.
There's no other dates listed
Watch
for
the
them.
video.
October 3rd was the last date listed on the meeting,
Oh, for them?
on the
Okay.
Desi side.
Okay, so I know that she said they were meeting, I'm pretty sure she said in this room last time we were here, they were meeting in November, so I'll find out from her though.
Yeah, and it might be just a matter of information sharing, so you can
Right.
say that you've had the initial to see where the gaps are and we're gonna be.
So let's just block out some time tomorrow to talk about.
Yeah,
Maybe
I just
after
I don't wanna move
lunch,
forward.
cause we're meeting at 3, so maybe
Yeah.
block it
I'm
out
hoping
for
that we'll
lunch.
get through speaking and listening and length
Right.
maybe a little more.
So,
Speaking and listening should go like
hopefully
that,
speaking and
language may
listening
be a
will
little
go.
harder,
It should.
but if we're just doing clusters of things, we should maybe
I
get through
think
language.
writing is probably a very difficult one to do.
It is, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it is.
So speaking and listening is gonna be so easy, you wanna just do it now?
No,
Thought I'd
take
try.
the marker away.
I thought I'd just try.
She's on a roll.
Thought I'd just try. Okay.
Thank you, Karen.
So is there anything else you want to adjourn for the day? You don't wanna work anymore?
Oh, not unless you want to.
I said I would. She's packing up over there. Oh, we're still talking? Oh, okay. No, certainly go. We're done. It's 20 after 4. I think we're finished. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. So
And I'll
where
see you 8 o'clock tomorrow morning here, right?
In
Okay?
this room?
In this room. All of our stuff should be, well, I'll move that so we can do something else.
We can leave our stuff here on this table, right?
You can leave your stuff here, yeah. I would take your electronics and your purses and personal things, but everything else can stay. So, thank you very much. Thanks for your hard work and good conversation. Appreciate it.
For your hard work, and thank you for your candy.
Oh,
You know what, you need to put a jar out, cause I know you're paying that out of your personal fire. You shouldn't do that, but we appreciate it.
Did you
But I
do
can
that,
get it
Carrie?
to
You bought that kit yourself?
Kim got a bag of it and I bought a small bag of it because it's important to our work.
Have a good trip back and a good meeting tomorrow.
Got me an email after tomorrow.
Okay.
Well,
Yes.
and I plan to be alone.
Oh, you are.
I taught all
I'm not.
day, but I
Okay.
can't imagine.
So is Nick coming back?
Of course, I drive really fast. Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Are y'all done? Huh? Y'all done? Yes, so we're ready to go out with the others. Did you decide?
Yeah, and I haven't said anything to Shelby yet.
Okay.
As far as, like dinner and dancing,